Chapter 488. Rocky isn't in Fort Yuyang. That was the first thing Misaka Makoto said when she returned. She then added, "My friends aren't in Fort Yuyang as well." As a newly promoted universe-level freelancer, the small Fort Yuyang could not hide from Misaka Makoto's spiritual sense. All she had to do was to sense it, and she would know if the people she was looking for were there. That's normal. That's what I expected. Gohan was very calm when he heard Misaka Makoto's report. He was not surprised at all. If Rocky's target is the Imperial Zergs, then Fort Yuyang is meaningless to him. It's just a stronghold to store his troops. Right now, he should be concentrating all his forces in Mei Ling Mountain Range. That's his base. It's normal that you can't find Rocky and your friends in Fort Yuyang. That's why I suggest we take a detour around Fort Yuyang and return to Yuzhong City. We'll get help from Yuzhong City's intelligence system. That way, we'll have a better chance of finding your friends. Gohan could not wait to return to Yuzhong City. However, Fort Yuyang hasn't been completely abandoned. I found out that there's a universe-level Yuan Ko guarding there. He might know where my friends are. Misaka Makoto did not directly respond to Gohan's suggestion. However, the meaning behind her words was very clear. She did not want to let go of any clues that could lead to her friends. As a universe-level Yuan Ko, who was on par with Rocky, he would definitely know a lot of secrets. Most of the information about Misaka Makoto's friends would be in the hands of universe-level Yuan Ko. I understand. Let's capture that universe-level Yuan Ko and force him to tell us where your friends are. Gohan gave up on the idea of taking a detour back to Yuzhong City. After spending the past few days together, he understood Misaka Makoto's character very well. She was a good person who would always put her friends first. As long as there was news of her friends, she would be the first to rush to them. He would either follow her or return to Yuzhong City alone. In fact, it was not a big deal for Gohan to return alone. With his 14,000 Cork Sword Essence, the powerful 9 Swords of Mysterious Heaven, and Yin-Yang Sword Art, as long as he did not encounter the Meteor Stage Yuan Ko, Gohan could easily kill his way back to Yuzhong City. Unfortunately, Gohan could not let go of Misaka Makoto. Although she was very powerful and smart, she was too easily swayed by her emotions. That kind of personality would usually ruin the plan during critical moments. Loki was full of tricks. Even if Misaka Makoto was a universe-level Yuan Ko, she would not be able to gain any benefits from Loki's trap. She might even be controlled by Loki using her friends to threaten her. After much consideration, Gohan felt that Misaka Makoto could not fall into Loki's hands. He could only follow behind Misaka Makoto and help her strategize so that she would not fall into his trap. Everyone must be very curious as to why I suddenly gathered everyone here. Is it because Yuan Ko has begun to attack Yuzhong City? Gu Wudao scanned the more than 5,000 swordsmen below the stage with a stern gaze. His gaze was so sharp that everyone who met his gaze could not help but avoid his gaze. Of course, that was except for Lian Ling. Then I can tell you the answer to this question now. No, of course not. Right now, Yuan Ko's main force is still staying in the Mei Ling mountain range. They haven't even come within 100 kilometers of us. We're still very safe for now, at least for today. Hearing Gu Wudao's words, all the swordsmen breathed a sigh of relief. Most of them thought that Yuan Ko's army had already set out for Yuzhong City, and Gu Wudao had gathered them here to arrange a defensive battle mission. Therefore, everyone was secretly afraid that they would die in battle. Now that they heard Gu Wudao say that Yuan Ko's army was still in the Mei Ling mountain range, they all breathed a sigh of relief. The sigh of relief was originally a very small sound, but when the sound of many people's sighs of relief gathered together, it became loud enough for Gu Wudao to hear. Oof! Gu Wudao snorted with a horrified expression. The entire venue immediately fell silent, and no one dared to make sound. You can all breathe a sigh of relief now. You can breathe a sigh of relief today, but what about tomorrow? What about the day after tomorrow? What about next week? Do you still have a chance to breathe a sigh of relief here? Gu Wudao's tone was like an angry machine gun, shocking all the swordsmen into silence. Let me tell you again, it's been more than 20 days since the fall of Fort Yuyang. Do you think that Yuan Ko has been resting and breathing a sigh of relief in these 20 days? Wrong. You're very wrong. They're all accumulating their strength and looking for something that can erase Yuzhong City from the map in a few seconds. Do you understand? How could this be? No way, that's impossible. How could there be a force in this world that can erase Yuzhong City in a few seconds? The sword bearers below the stage suddenly became restless. Even though they were suppressed by Zhu Wudao's imposing manner and didn't dare to say a word. Now that they had heard such explosive news, they couldn't help but discuss it. Indeed, in their minds, there was no force that could destroy a base city. As a matter of fact, in the past 1,000 years, not even when humans were at their weakest, not even when they had lost 3 base cities, not once had a base city been destroyed by Yuan Ko with one strike. It was just like before the era of nuclear weapons. No one had ever imagined that something as horrifying as nuclear weapons existed in the world. Don't think that such a thing doesn't exist. It's just that you don't deserve to know about it. Gu Wudao pressed a button on the control panel. The entire conference room darkened. Then a hexagonal cylinder was projected in front of everyone. This is called the creation divinity. It's one of the most horrifying forces in this world. Gu Wudao slowly explained the general situation of the creation divinity. However, he concealed the fact that Kenzu had been exiled to the void because of the creation divinity. Without the tacit consent of the Lun Yin family, this information would never be made public. When Zhu Wudao was describing the creation godhead, everyone below the stage was silent. They listened very seriously and didn't miss a single word that Zhu Wudao said. Only now did they know that such a terrifying power existed in the world. An emotion called fear began to spread in everyone's hearts. The thought that such a horrifying force could befall them at any time. Not only would it destroy them, but it would also destroy their families and the city that they cherished. All the swordsmen began to feel fear. Coupled with the dim lights, the mood in the entire conference room instantly dropped to a freezing point. Some people might find this strange and say that it was fine for the upper echelons to know about this, but not most people. Otherwise, it would cause social chaos. This was not without reason. However, Gu Wudao didn't tell most people. He only told the swordsmen, who were the mainstay of humanity. Humans could die, but they couldn't die without knowing what they were dying for. Only when they understood that humanity was on the brink of collapse would they do their best to join the battle. Why aren't you saying anything? Weren't there a lot of discussion just now? Why? Are you all frightened by this news? Gu Wudao asked coldly. Silence. No one knew how to answer Gu Wudao's question. Tui, F***CK them. Suddenly, a voice came from an unknown corner. Although it wasn't loud enough, it instantly exploded in the hearts of all the swordsmen. That's right. Let's F***CK them up. On the spot, a few people stood up, waved their fists, and roared. F***CK them. That's right, F***CK them. Ha ha ha. F***CK them. A few seconds later, the entire conference hall was filled with the words F***CK, his mother. 5,000 swordsmen simultaneously shouted F***CK, his mother, in unison. If there was a real-time bullet screen, I believe that the entire scene would be covered by these 4 short Chinese words, without a single ray of light seeping through. F***CK. What do we women do wrong? Why do we have to call them F***CK them? Why don't you call them F***CK them? Lian Yinling ridiculed from a very sharp angle. But the next second, she waved her fists and shouted F***CK them. F***CK them, louder than anyone else. Many people would never forget this scene for the rest of their lives. Many years later, this video would be circulated on the internet and be sought after by all humans. There were also many people who couldn't hold back their tears when they saw this video. Their friends, teachers, classmates, and relatives could only reminisce through this video. Very good. I am very gratified. This is the voice that the brave warriors of Yuzhong City should have. 700 years ago, under the leadership of Zhetian Jiandi, our ancestors worked hard to build the great Yuzhong City. Now we, the descendants, will use our own strength to make Yuzhong City stand on this land forever." Zhu Wudao also waved his fists. Although he was a gray-haired old man, his movements were so powerful and heart-wrenching. "We have to attack. The only path we can take in Yuzhong City is destruction. We must attack and seize or re-exile the Creator's godhood. My brothers, compatriots, and friends, let us raise the sword maidens in our hands and drain every drop of blood from our bodies." With this, Zhu Wudao suddenly drew out his Emperor Yu's sword and pointed it towards the sky. "All for humanity. All for Yuzhong. All for humanity. All for Yuzhong." All the swordsmen followed Zhu Wudao's example. They raised their sword maidens and shouted with their lives, "All for humanity. All for Yuzhong." Chapter 489. Sister Michin, if you want to successfully rescue your friends, I hope that you can listen to my commands. In a forest outside Fort Yuyang, Gohan was sitting on the ground and communicating with Misaka Michin before the battle. If Misaka Michin had not recovered, Gohan would not have said such words. However, strength was king now. If Gohan wanted to take command, he had to communicate with Misaka Michin in a friendly manner. "Sure, no problem. As long as your idea is correct, I'll listen to you. I believe in your ability to command." Misaka Michin agreed readily. When they broke through the zombies' defensive line, Gohan's imagination and ability to command had amazed Misaka Michin. Misaka Michin was not a strong-willed person, so she agreed to Gohan's request without hesitation. "All right, it's a deal." Gohan extended his hand. Misaka Michin hesitated for a while before giving Gohan's hand pat. "It's a deal. First of all, Michin, you must promise me that you won't expose the fact that you become a universe-level freak. If possible, I hope that you can return to the state where the electromagnetic model in your body was destroyed." Gohan smiled and gave his first suggestion. "You little brat, what kind of devious ideas are you plotting?" When Misaka Mikoto heard Gohan's words, she knew that Gohan had a lot of evil intentions in his heart. "It's nothing much. If a universe-level Yuan Ko wants to escape, even if you're a universe-level Yuan Ko, I'm afraid that you won't be able to stop him. It's better to let him come to us on his own accord. That way, we can save some effort." It seemed like Yuan Ko, who was left behind in Fort Yuyang, was going to be in trouble. "Everyone will be divided into 3 battlefields. 3 different teams will be assigned to different missions." In the central conference room, Zhu Wudao waved his hand, and a scale map of Mei Ling Mountain was projected. The key to Loki's plan is to find the Emperor Zurg dimensional crystal hidden in Yuzhong City. Without the Emperor Zurg, Loki is just a universe-level Yuan Ko. It's impossible for him to control the powerful creation deity's personality. That's why our first target is to destroy Loki's method of obtaining the Emperor Zurg. As he said that, Zhu Wudao tapped a few times on the projected map. 6 locations on the map were marked by Zhu Wudao, and a long earthworm was drawn on them. Before I announce this plan, I would first like to thank our brave and fearless sky-piercing sword reconnaissance team. In yesterday's operation, the sky-piercing sword team not only perfectly investigated the situation of the entire Mei Ling mountain range, but also rescued our Eagle Cat sword spirit. They are a great team, a team that will be forever remembered by Yuzhong City. Speaking of this, Zhu Wudao's face suddenly became gloomy. However, one of their members, Tyrant Wang, disappeared when he went down the mountain to deliver the information. He hasn't been found yet. Perhaps he has sacrificed his life for our Yuzhong City. I suggest that we observe a minute of silence for Tyrant Wang to express our grief for him. After Zhu Wudao finished speaking, he took the lead to bend his waist. The rest of the sword-bearers also followed suit and entered a minute of silence. A minute later, according to our brave sky-piercing sword squad, there are a total of 6 giant platinum earthworms distributed in these locations. They're continuously mining the ore in the vein in an attempt to dig out the ore containing the Emperor Zurg. I have to admit that the speed of these 6 giant platinum earthworms in a day is equivalent to our speed in half a month. If they continue to dig like this, even if they can't dig out the Emperor Zurg, The Mei Ling vein that Yuzhong City relies on for survival will be completely emptied. We can't allow that to happen. Zhu Wudao forcefully knocked on these points. We have to kill these giant platinum gold earthworms. Our main mission is to kill these giant platinum gold earthworms. Aren't these the locations with the most abundant ore veins in the Mei Ling mountain range? These Yuanko's eyes are really sharp. The sword bearers who saw these locations were amazed. They didn't expect Yuanko to be so familiar with the situation in the Mei Ling mountain range. Quiet down. Many of our compatriots have been captured by Yuanko and are suffering the most painful torture. It's not strange for a few weak-willed fellows to leak the location of the Mei Ling mountain ranges or veins. There's nothing to make a fuss about. Next, I'm going to talk about the most important thing. Zhu Wudao's words quickly calmed the scene down. My plan is for 3 teams to start attacking from these 3 spots. Each team will be responsible for 2 giant platinum earthworms and send them back to the dimensional whirlpool. Without the giant platinum earthworms, I want to see how Loki can mine. Zhu Wudao said domineeringly. Pleated sword spirit, I will assign you 1,500 sword bearers and famous sword bearers. There will also be 2 spiritual sword bearers as your assistants. You will start from point A and be responsible for the giant platinum earthworms at point 1 and 2. Zhu Wudao touched a few spots, indicating that the pleated sword spirit was responsible for those spots. I promised to complete the mission. Between me and these 2 earthworms, only one can live. The pleated sword spirit clenched his fists and said while gritting his teeth, Sword spirit Mu Shui, I will also assign you 1,500 sword bearers and famous sword bearers. There will also be 2 spiritual sword bearers as your assistants. You will start from point B and be responsible for the giant platinum earthworms at point 3 and 4. Zhu Wudao continued to assign. Then, a slim but slightly ugly female sword bearer took over the mission. She was sword spirit Mu Shui, Zhang Mu. Wine poem sword spirit. You will lead 2,000 sword bearers and famed sword bearers. At the same time, there will be 3 spirit sword bearers as your assistants. You will set off from point C and be responsible for the giant platinum earthworms at point 5 and point 6. However, you are different from the other 2, because the Luo Ting camp is the closest to the giant platinum earthworms at point 6. You will also be responsible for destroying all the stone crushers we have left there. If the giant platinum earthworms are not completely destroyed, we can also slow down the speed of Loki's crushing stones. The sword spirit Jiu Shi was a gentle and refined man with a gentle and elegant temperament. He looked rather similar to Dawn, one of the 4 heavenly kings before the great calamity. Speaking of which, the sword spirit Jiu Shi's surname was also Li. Yes, perhaps they were related by blood. Who knew? Zhu Wudao assigned more than 5,000 sword bearers in no time. Next, it was Zhu Wudao and Lu Lei's own task. Once you guys start attacking, Loki and the other U-level Yuan Ko will definitely counterattack. However, you don't have to worry. Lu Lei, I, and the remaining spiritual sword bearers will help you stall those U-level Yuan Ko. However, you only have 1 hour. Within 1 hour, you must destroy the giant platinum earthworms in your hands. As for what will happen after 1 hour, we'll talk about it when the time comes. If we 2 old bones are still capable, maybe by that time, a U-level Yuan Ko will fall on Mount Miling. Zhu Wudao sneered. This war conference was about to enter the last part. Next is the problem of everyone's assignment. I'll give you guys 5 minutes to report the names of the teams you want to form. I'll assign them according to your list. When these sword bearers fought outside, they usually formed their own teams with a few people or even a dozen people. This way, they would be safer outside. These teams had fought their way through countless battles, so they were the most trustworthy and had the most tacit understanding with each other. When they fought together, their combat power was not as simple as 1 + 1 is equal to 2. Because of this, Zhu Wudao asked them to report the names of the teams they wanted to form. This way, they could maximize the strength of the sword bearers. These sword bearers were most familiar with their teammates. Without hesitation, they reported the name list of their team members at lightning speed. As for Song Yifei, he directly jumped from ancient sword bearers to treasure sword bearers. After taking a few basic classes at Yuzhong University, he was thrown into the same team as Gohan to complete the trial mission. Therefore, Song Yifei didn't have any teammates. If he had, it would be Gohan, Yi Wenjun, Ku Rakin, and Liu Yinling. Unfortunately, Gohan hadn't returned yet. Yi Wenjun and Ku Rakin hadn't appeared in the conference hall. Song Yifei could only fill in the name of Liu Yinling. It was quite tragic when he thought about it. 5 minutes passed quickly. All the teams had been reported and were waiting to be assigned to the 3 different teams. Of course, this assignment wasn't done by Wu Dao. There were 5,000 people and hundreds or even thousands of teams. Wu Dao didn't have the time in the United States to assign these things. All the names were uploaded to the BAT's supercomputer, which was in the hands of Tomono Kakashi. With the help of the supercomputing chip, the most reasonable assignment table was quickly calculated and sent to the personal terminals of the sword bearers. I've been assigned to the pleated blade spirit. Ling, see if you're also with the pleated blade spirit. Song Yifei's personal terminal chimed, and her message was sent. Is that so? I might have to wait for a while. Liu Yinling's personal terminal didn't respond. At this time, the other sword bearers' personal terminals chimed one after another. Within a few seconds, everyone received their assigned information. Tomono Kakashi's computing speed was still outstanding. However, Liu Yinling's personal terminal still didn't receive any information. Liu Yinling didn't need to think to know that Zhu Wudao was behind this. She didn't say anything and directly jumped onto the rostrum. Grandpa Zhu, which team am I in? Chapter 490. She's still here. Zhu Wudao's heart skipped a beat. As expected, Liu Yinling was unwilling to be excluded. This was a habit of the Liu family. The Liu family would not stay out of this matter no matter what. However, Zhu Wudao didn't want Liu Yinling to interfere. Liu Yinling was the only descendant of the Liu family. If she died in the Miling mountain range, how could he face Lord Kinzu's spirit in heaven? Ling, why are you here? I don't remember your name being on the invitation list. Zhu Wudao didn't panic. He smiled at Liu Yinling. Of course, Liu Yinling didn't receive an invitation. She came with Song Yifei. Song Yifei didn't think too much about it. Since Liu Yinling wanted to come, did she have any reason to refuse? I'm here myself. Can I? Liu Yinling glared at Zhu Wudao. She didn't back down at all. The 5,000 sword bearers behind her clicked their tongues in wonder. They didn't know where this woman came from. How dare she speak to Sword Immortal Baiju like this? Most importantly, Sword Immortal Baiju didn't seem angry at all. It was as if Liu Yinling's attitude was natural. Of course, we have an agreement with the 8 cities. Miss Ling, you can come and go as you please. We have no objections. Zhu Wudao's words caused another round of gasps. Who was this woman? How could she have such terrifying authority? If she wanted to go to the top floor of the sword pavilion, would no one be able to stop her? Although most of the sword bearers were at a loss when they heard the news, some of them were knowledgeable enough to guess Liu Yinling's identity. They didn't expect that the descendant of the Liu family would be here as well. Ling, it's your freedom to come here, but it's also our Yuzhong city's freedom to plan the battle. This battle is our Yuzhong people's business. It has nothing to do with your Yanjing people. Please don't make things difficult for me. I've already made arrangements. The sword bearers from Yanjing and the other base cities will be responsible for the defense of Yuzhong City. Go and find the people from Yanjing. They are staying in the Yanjing Hotel. Zhu Wudao was adamant about not letting Liu Yinling join the battle. This made Liu Yinling feel very helpless. In the command hall of Yiyang Fortress, Hercules was concentrating on a novel in his hand. Judging from the title, it should be a novel from before the apocalypse called Alabuta's Sacrifice. It was a novel that Hercules had obtained from Athena's collection after much difficulty. In order to see the true face of this divine book, Hercules had even made a promise to Athena that as long as it was within his ability, he would definitely do it for her. That was how he got the book from Athena. Hercules had no other hobbies other than these novels written before the apocalypse, especially the novels written by a Chinese and Taiwanese writer named Lawson. Unfortunately, many of Lawson's works were destroyed during the apocalypse and the Great Cultural Destruction. This Ellipta year's sacrifice had become a unique work. Only Athena still had these 32 volumes. Legend had it that the other 32 volumes could not be found at all. This made Hercules, who had read it several times, feel an itch in his heart, but he could do nothing about it. Hercules might not be familiar with the name Hercules, but his other name was Hercules. Hercules was the child of Zeus and a human. He had half human blood and half divine blood. He was one of the demigods. Generally speaking, the demigods in the Greek pantheon were half-baked guys, such as Achilles, Aetes, and the like. They weren't as good as the best, but they were better than the worst. They were somewhere between the dragon-level elemental soul and the dragon-level elemental soul. Many of them had died in battles over the past 1,000 years, and they didn't have any notable achievements in their lives. However, Hercules was a demigod. According to the legends, he was able to fight against most of the Greek gods. He was a powerful warrior who killed the Medusa, a great class elemental. After his death, he ascended to heaven and became the Hercules of the Greek pantheon. He was even able to fight on par with Apollo. Thus, Heracles became the only universe-level elemental among the demigods. His brute strength could be said to have reached the pinnacle. Legend had it that if he hit Earth with all his strength, he could cause the Earth's orbit to deviate by a centimeter. This showed how terrifying Heracles' strength was. At this moment, Hercules was one of the helpers Loki had hired. He was responsible for protecting Loki's rear at Yuyang Fortress. Logically speaking, Hercules should not have appeared here. Loki belonged to Norse mythology, while Hercules belonged to Greek mythology. In real history, for the ownership of the faith of the whole of Europe, the two pantheons were constantly fighting each other. This war lasted for thousands of years, and the hatred between the two pantheons was as deep as the sea. They could not wait to destroy each other. However, the situation changed during the Age of Destruction. The Norse pantheon was heavily damaged by the longevity Giendi. Their leader, Odin, was blasted into the void by the longevity Giendi and never appeared again. The entire Norse pantheon lost the power of the prehistoric Yuan Ko and became a piece of meat coveted by others. Helplessly, under the leadership of the new main god, Loki, he took the initiative to find the arch-enemy of the Greek pantheon, Zeus. He took the initiative to submit to Zeus and became a subsidiary pantheon of the Greek pantheon. Later, in order to deal with the threat of the Eastern Celestial Court, Zeus took the initiative to form an alliance with the god of Jehovah pantheon. Together, they formed the Western Temple, one of the three most powerful Yuan Ko forces in the Yuan Ko pantheon. The Norse pantheon and the Greek pantheon became familiar with each other. Many of the gods put down their old grudges and became new friends. Loki and Hercules were one such example. Because Hercules was half human and half god, he was disdained and rejected by many Greek gods, especially when Hercules became a Yun level that even pure-blooded gods could rarely reach. Yuan Ko was even more envious. Other than Apollo and Athena, Hercules had no other friends in the divine kingdom. Loki's bloodline was noble, and he deliberately made friends with Hercules. Soon, the two of them became good friends and comrades. This time, Loki had made a big move. In order to ensure that everything went smoothly, he would not let go of Hercules, who was so good at fighting. Under Loki's invitation, Hercules joined the operation and guarded Fort Yuyang for Loki. Logically speaking, Hercules did not want to guard Fort Yuyang. He only wanted to join the battle as soon as possible and smash the heads of some human sword-bearers to vent his unbridled strength. However, Loki insisted that he stay in Fort Yuyang. This made Hercules feel very uncomfortable. Even the Ellipta year's sacrifice, which he could read for dozens of hours without panting, could not wear down Hercules' excess energy. As he read, his mind began to wander. Just when Hercules was bored to death, something interesting suddenly happened. One of Hercules' Saint Seiya suddenly came to report that a group of kobolds had discovered a sword-bearers fighting in the forest west of Fort Yuyang. They did not know what to do. When Hercules first heard the report, He was very confused. What was there to report about a sword-bearers fighting in the forest west of Fort Yuyong? Why didn't they just go up and kill him? Why did they have to report it to him? Could it be that they were planning to let a great universe-level Yuan puppet, like him, personally take action? Forget it. He was just worried that he had nowhere to use his strength. Now that he had a sword-bearer, he could relax a little. He could only hope that the sword mistress of this sword-bearer was of a higher level and could take a few hits. When Hercules arrived at the battlefield, he was shocked to find that things were not as simple as he thought. The sword mistress who was being chased by a human sword-bearer was none other than Misaka Mikoto, who had escaped from Fort Yuyong. At that moment, Misaka Mikoto was in a sorry state. She no longer had the majestic aura of a U-level Yuan Ko. She was being chased by a small, ancient sword-tier sword mistress. Her clothes were in tatters, and she was about to fall under the sword of this ancient sword-tier sword mistress. She would become the second U-level Yuan Ko to die at the hands of an ancient sword-tier sword mistress. Hercules was not surprised by this situation. He was part of the group that attacked Misaka Mikoto with Loki. He was there when Misaka Mikoto escaped and saw her explode her godhead with his own eyes. P.S. Hercules was not very clear about Misaka Mikoto's situation. He thought that all U-level Yuan Ko had godheads in their bodies like him. That was how she managed to escape. Since her godhead had exploded, it was not surprising that Misaka Mikoto was being chased by an ancient sword-tier sword mistress. However, he heard from Loki that Misaka Mikoto should have escaped hundreds of kilometers away. Why would she appear next to Fort Yuyong again? Forget it, I don't care anymore. I can't let Misaka Mikoto die in front of me. If that pervert in Liberty City finds out about this, he'll do anything he wants. I can't bear the wrath of that pervert. With that, Hercules leaped up and charged toward Misaka Mikoto like a cannonball. The ancient sword-tier sword mistress who was attacking Misaka Mikoto reacted quickly. When she saw Hercules coming toward her, she immediately turned into a stream of light and returned to the human sword-bearer who was secretly commanding the battle 1 or 2 kilometers away. There was no way Hercules would let a sword mistress escape from under his nose. Without another word, he went after the unfortunate human sword-bearer. Hercules, don't hurt that human. I have something to ask him. Misaka Mikoto said immediately when she saw Hercules chasing after the human sword-bearer. Hercules blinked. His fist that was originally going to blow up the human sword-bearer's head turned into a claw. In less than 2 seconds, he grabbed the neck of the human sword-bearer and returned to Misaka Mikoto's side. The human sword-bearer who was caught was, of course, Gahan. Chapter 491. What do you want to ask this human? Why did you come back here? Hercules looked at Gahan's head in frustration. He wanted to crush Gahan's head to vent the excess energy in his body. Guhan's neck was choked by Hercules, and his legs kept swaying back and forth. He was like a rabbit that was still struggling in the hands of a hunter. Sooner or later, he would die. Thanks to this idiot, I was chased all the way back here. Misaka Mikoto's face was pale. Hercules, you are also a hero. Why are you helping Loki? Loki is my friend. I'm just helping my friend. Hercules suddenly showed an honest expression. Loki said that I can't really hurt you. Since you are back, follow me back to Yang Fortress. When a war is over, Loki will let you go back to the Freeman City. Hercules, since you are helping your friend, let me ask you something. How are my friends now? Are they okay? Misaka Mikoto suddenly asked. Hercules was not surprised by Misaka Mikoto's question. He had seen the relationship between Misaka Mikoto and her friends. To be honest, he admired such a relationship. Don't worry, your friends are fine. Loki has treated them well. They are now following Loki to Meiling Mountain. When the war is over, you'll be able to see them again. Hercules readily revealed the whereabouts of Misaka Mikoto's friends. It was no secret to Hercules. Besides, Misaka Mikoto could not even defeat an ancient sword-tier sword mistress. What else could she do? As expected, Loki brought them to Meiling Mountain after all. Misaka Mikoto lamented in her heart. This was what she and Gahan had expected, but it was also the last thing she wanted to hear. With her friends by Loki's side, they could become Loki's means of threatening her, at any time. It seemed like the show had to continue. Okay, Hercules, I will go back with you. Misaka Mikoto nodded, and then looked at Gahan and Hercules' hand. She sneered. Hercules, can you put him down now? I have something to say to him. You are a god. What do you have to say to a human? Hercules said disdainfully. Although the Yuan Ko's standard of strength was based on the various levels set by humans, and all the Yuan Ko came into contact with it, the specific title was different from the Yuan Ko's mouth. The freemen, like humans, used the system of rat, tiger, dragon, ghost dragon, life-death universe to refer to themselves. However, when it came to the Western Temple, the universe-level Yuan Ko became a god. These people claimed to be gods, but they always looked down on humans as if they were looking at ants. P.S. A reader pointed out to the author that if the Yuan Ko also referred to themselves as universe-level Yuan Ko and universe-level Yuan Ko, it would be a little too out of place. It was just like how Marong and Song would never call themselves adulterers. The author felt that the reader's words made sense. There was indeed a bug in the system that the author did not think of. The author felt sorry for everyone. Therefore, the author modified the setting. In the future, the Yuan Kos would use different titles to refer to themselves according to their faction, bloodline, and identity. This would make it more scientific and credible. However, these Yuan Kos have accepted and are familiar with the Yuan Ko system set by humans. They will subconsciously convert their titles to the Yuan Ko system, and there will be no misunderstandings. That's the general modification. The author feels sorry for everyone. There are some things that I did not think of at the beginning, and now it is a little confusing. The author bows to all the readers. Hercules, aren't you a human yourself? Misaka Mikoto did not hesitate to poke at the sore spot in Hercules' heart. She then added, Hercules, do you really think that the gods will accept you? Are you really a god? In the eyes of those gods, including Loki, who you regard as your brother and friend, you are just a mixed blood. Shut up. Heracles' breathing became rapid. It had been many years since someone dared to face him directly and expose the hidden pain in his heart. He said with a hideous face, Don't you want this human? I will kill this human now. It's up to you whether you want to kill him or not. It doesn't matter if I ask this question or not. He's been hunting us for 3 days and 3 nights. I just want to ask him why he has such a huge hatred for me. Misaka Mikoto did not look at Gahan, as if she really did not care about Gahan. She continued to provoke Hercules. Hercules, do you think that the gods will treat you as a god just because you killed a human? As long as there is even a drop of human blood flowing in your body, you are a bastard in their eyes. You, Hercules, know this better than I do, don't you? Hercules, you may not know this, but the mayor once told me that you are the god most likely to get rid of the filth in your blood. As long as you are willing, the Freedom Metropolis can help you get rid of all this. Join us, the Freedom Metropolis, and become a new free man. This is the best future for you. After listening to Misaka Mikoto's long speech, Hercules fell into a deep loneliness. He even loosened his grip on Gahan's neck, allowing Gahan a few breaths of fresh air so that he would not be strangled to death. Suddenly, Hercules stomped hard on the ground with his right foot. A shockwave, centered on Hercules, swept across the entire radius of 2 to 3 kilometers. Except for the 2 saints beside Hercules, all the other Yuan Ko were blasted into a cloud of blood mist. Then a dimensional vortex appeared and sucked in the bodies of these Yuan Ko. So, you came back to say this nonsense to me. Hercules' eyes were deep. It seemed that he was not as simple and honest as he looked. Do you think I will be bewitched by you? If you are not tempted, then why did you kill these unlucky people? Misaka Mikoto glanced at the empty surroundings where there was not a single Yuan Ko. Hercules, my words are always valid. When you have thought it through, send someone to inform me. The Freedom Metropolis will do our best to help you. That day will never come. Hercules tossed Gahan back to Misaka Mikoto. Look after him. Don't let him run around in Fort Yuyang. I have no interest in helping you protect a human's life. After saying that, Heracles turned around and left. His two Saints Seiya helped Misaka Makoto and Guhan up and brought them behind Heracles as they returned to Fort Yuyang under the blood-red glow of the setting sun. These two saints were dragon-level and extremely powerful among the saints. To be able to escape Hercules' attempt to silence them, they must be Hercules' most trusted subordinates. Under Hercules' lead, even if a human entered Fort Yuyang, the Yuan Ko would not dare to act rashly. They could only watch as Gahan entered the fortress's command building. After that, a room was allocated to Misaka Makoto and Gahan. After that, Hercules disappeared. He did not come to see them for the whole day. Beep, beep, beep. An electric spark flashed on Misaka Makoto's fingertips. She nodded. There are no surveillance devices in this room, and there are no university-level surveillance spells. I don't think anyone is eavesdropping on us. We can talk without worry. Don't worry. Even if Hercules knows everything about us, he won't do anything to us. Your words have opened a hole in his heart. He must have wanted to leave the Temple of the West for a long time. I made the right bet. Gahan clenched his fists as he spoke. You're still talking about winning the bet? I almost couldn't hold myself back just now. If Hercules had used a little more strength, your neck would have been snapped by him. I couldn't have stopped him in time, Misaka Makoto said with a frown. It's fine. Even if my neck was snapped, I won't die in a medical pod, Gahan said nonchalantly. However, with Misaka Makoto's university-level reflexes, even if she could not save Gahan's neck in time, she could defeat Hercules the moment Gahan's neck was snapped. Then, she could place Gahan in the medical pod for treatment. Even if Misaka Makoto did not make it in time, Gahan could return to Changyang Mountain in an instant. With the help of the memory fragments, Gahan could be sent to the medical pod. Of course, that would be the worst outcome, and Gahan did not want that to happen. Next time, don't gamble with your life. My mother told me that those who drown are good at swimming. If you don't change your way of thinking about gambling with your life, you'll die from it sooner or later. Misaka Makoto suddenly said something that was full of philosophy. If I don't have enough strength, I can only make up for it with my life. Gahan smiled bitterly. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. I hope so. Misaka Makoto looked deeply into Guhan's eyes. You're really amazing. You've never met Hercules before, but you're able to grasp his thoughts. I can't believe what you taught me shook him completely. Who said I have never met Hercules? Gahan recalled the countless sword Maiden online walkthroughs in his mind. Do you know a quest called Heart of the Brave? That quest can reveal far more than what I just said. Chapter 492. However, Gahan could not take the initiative to speak to Misaka Makoto. He could only convey the message through Qingpin's mouth. You want to come with me? Misaka Makoto immediately expressed her objection when she heard Gahan's request. I'm Yuan Ko after all. The demonic beasts on the streets won't recognize me. I won't arouse any suspicion if I walk into Fort Yuyang. However, you're a human. The demonic beasts will be able to sniff out your scent immediately. When the demonic beasts swarm you, unless I reveal my true strength, you'll definitely be torn to pieces. Gahan said that Hercules hasn't decided how to deal with us. He's still hesitating and struggling to decide if he should hand us over to Loki. Perhaps Hercules wants us to leave on our own. Qingpin, who was leaning against Misaka Makoto's chest, said in a daze. After Gahan told her that it was a massager, Qingpin found herself indulging in the feeling of having two soft pillows on her back. It was so comfortable. All right, Qingpin, just treat your back as two massagers. Gahan walked in front of Qingpin and comforted her. However, his words made Misaka Makoto angry. What did he mean? What did he mean by my Opie is a massager? Who would dare to use the universe-level Yuan Ko's Opie as a massager? That's right. That's right. Does Gahan not want Qingpin anymore? Qingpin, who was in Misaka Makoto's arms, also glared angrily at Gahan, as if he was questioning why Gahan would put him in Misaka Makoto's arms. After looking at the food, Gahan opened his dimensional pocket and began to stuff the food into it. It was not because Gahan's dimensional pocket was running out of food, but it was an instinctive reaction from Gahan. For the citizens of every base city, the scarcity of food was the first education they received. Although Yuzhong City had an adequate supply of food with the help of advanced technology, once the city was under siege, it wouldn't take long. In just a few months, all the fields outside the city would be destroyed, and Yuzhong City would fall into a state of food shortage. For hundreds of years, no less than 10 million people had starved to death in Yuzhong City. While Guhan was busy collecting food, Misaka Makoto was sitting on the ground in a meditative posture with her eyes closed. She seemed to have gone on a mental journey, but no one knew where she had gone. Wah wah wah. Grandmaster doesn't want master anymore. 1, 2, 8. 8 little heads popped out from Qingpin's hair. They imitated Qingpin's tone and cried. How did Qingpin educate these 8 little ones? He actually made them accept Qingpin equals master and Guhan equals grandmaster? Who taught them that? Hey, can you make these 2 small things smaller? It's so hard to be poor. Poor boy pressed down hard on Misaka Makoto's opie pie, trying to push the 2 annoying things back into the car. When we get out, don't move around and don't leave the infant pouch. Listen to Sister Makoto, and I understand. As Guhan spoke, he reached his hand into the poor boy's long hair, as if he was catching fleas. He grabbed the poor boy, the 2 poor boys who were hiding inside and trying to sneak out with the poor boy, and pulled them into his arms. Guhan could not care less about the science behind it. However, Guhan was willing to believe in Misaka Makoto's words. Although Guhan still preferred to stay here and be sent to Loki by Hercules to avoid unnecessary trouble, Guhan still preferred to stay here obediently and be sent to Loki by Hercules. However, Guhan knew Misaka Makoto's personality very well. He knew that he would not be able to stop her or persuade her. He could only follow behind her and clean up after her when the time came. However, it was only because she thought that Qingpin was delicious. Although the Blade Master and Yuan Ko had been fighting for thousands of years, most Yuan Ko with low intelligence could not effectively distinguish a woman from Yuan Ko or a Blade Master. Both of them had a strong smell of dimensional space on them. This was how Yuan Ko with low intelligence could distinguish between humans and Yuan Ko. Qingpin, be a good boy. Don't move around. Qingpin, who was on Misaka Makoto's chest, turned around uncomfortably, dawdled, and made small movements. It was completely different from when he was on Guhan's chest. After leaving the command building, Guhan saw that the bustling streets filled with humans had turned into a living hell. Black blood could be seen everywhere, and broken human bones could be seen on the ground. They were all residents of the Yuyang fort, but now they had turned into broken bones that couldn't even be distinguished. Strange, why didn't the Saint Seiya of Hercules stop me? Aren't they supposed to be guarding us? Misaka Makoto walked out of Fort Yuyang's command center unimpeded. The Saint Seiya, who were standing guard, did not seem to notice Misaka Makoto at all. They did not seem to care about their captive's escape. Huh, I'm carrying Qingpin? Misaka Makoto did not understand what Qingpin was talking about at first, but she quickly realized that Qingpin was hanging on her chest. What else could be carrying Qingpin other than her opie? Qingpin was used to lying in Guhan's arms and was used to the flat back. Now that there were 2 steam buns on the back, it seriously affected Qingpin's riding experience. Why are you carrying Qingpin for me? Misaka Makoto asked innocently as she hugged Qingpin. After a few minutes of peace, Misaka Makoto suddenly opened her eyes and stood up from the ground. She said to Guhan, "Brother Guhan, wait for me here for a while. I'll be right back. Little one, don't move around. This little one won't go back." Misaka Makoto blushed as she knocked on Qingpin's head. "You'll have one in the future. When that time comes, you'll wish for her to be bigger." The place where Guhan and Misaka Makoto were locked up should be the food warehouse in the command center. There was still a lot of food stored there, such as potatoes, sweet potatoes, and corn kernels. Yuan Ko and the rest were not interested in them, so they left them there. Guhan was speechless. Electromagnetism was too scary. Misaka Makoto's mastery of electromagnetism had reached an unimaginable level. She could control the electrons in the air to form a camera with a Wi-Fi connection. Was this black technology or pseudoscience? "No, I have to go out," Misaka Makoto replied firmly. I found our secret signal on the wall just now. I have to go there immediately to find out what's going on. Fine, I've lost him. Therefore, Guhan had stored all of these precious grains in his own dimensional brocade pouch. In any case, Guhan had obtained more than 10-dimensional brocade pouches that were 100 cubic meters in size from the trial array. It was more than enough to store all of these grains. After a few minutes of walking, Misaka Mikoto finally brought Qingpin to the place where she found the secret signal. Qingpin feels terrible. Qingpin was still twisting his body as he complained in pain. There's always something behind Qingpin. It's making Qingpin feel terrible. Qingpin hates this place. Guhan's the best. Guhan's place is flat and comfortable. Did he go out just now? Guhan was stunned. He had been thinking about Misaka Mikoto. Guhan swore to God that Misaka Mikoto had been by his side the whole time and had never left. Sister Mikoto, where are you going? Hearing Misaka Mikoto's words, Guhan frowned. We should wait here quietly. Wait for Hercules to tell Loki about us. Then we can make Loki come to us. It's better for us not to do anything unnecessary now to avoid unnecessary trouble. If I won't, Qingpin will never want this thing. Qingpin pouted and snorted. Her nostrils were raised to the sky, as if she had earned money by not giving up the opium pie. Little did she know that in the future. Forget it, no more talking about it. It will be Qingpin's tears. Only those Yuan-ko, with a certain level of intelligence, could tell the difference between a blade master and a Yuan-ko based on appearance, weapons, and other characteristics. Currently, the Yuan-ko walking around Fort Yuyang were all demonic beasts with single-digit intelligence. Naturally, they could not tell whether Qingpin was a Yuan-ko or a blade master. Guhan glared at Qingpin. Qingpin raised its head proudly. Don't worry, I'll stay here and not go anywhere. Guhan smiled and placed Qingpin on Misaka Mikoto. I'll take care of your little disciple for you. You just have to be my eyes, understand? Guhan said. Misaka Mikoto continued to walk toward the location where she had discovered the Freedom City. Along the way, many demonic beasts walked or ran past Misaka Mikoto. They did not pay much attention to Misaka Mikoto. On the other hand, Misaka Mikoto attracted a lot of ferocious gazes. In the eyes of demonic beasts, small creatures with tender skin were always the most delicious. Why do I have to be as stupid as Guhan? After a series of negotiations and compromises, Misaka Mikoto had no choice but to wear the adorable Qingpin's baby pouch. Misaka Mikoto could not accept it. When she first saw Guhan with Qingpin on his chest, she secretly mocked Guhan for being stupid and funny. She did not expect the tables to turn, and it was her turn to wear the stupid baby pouch. Right? Qingpin was repeating Guhan's words in his body. Since Guhan could not come out with Misaka Mikoto, Qingpin became Guhan's substitute. Guhan's consciousness shared the same vision as Qingpin's consciousness through the sword mark. In other words, although Guhan's body was not there, Guhan's consciousness came out with Qingpin. You don't know this, but electromagnetism has eyes too. Misaka Mikoto smiled. I only need a slightly more complicated combination of electrons, and I'll be able to use the electrons in the air to form my electronic eyes. Even if I'm in this room, I'll be able to see everything around me unless the gap in the room is so small that even electrons can't pass through. Chapter 493. It was a wall. Compared to the other walls, there was nothing special about this wall. Perhaps it could not be said that there was nothing special about it, because there was not a single drop of blood on this wall, unlike the surrounding walls, which were covered with large areas of spattered blood. Looking carefully at the wall, one would find something interesting in an inconspicuous place. It was a piece of graffiti, a small piece of graffiti about the size of a matchbox. The graffiti depicted a tightly clenched fist. Judging from the image, the fist wasn't beautiful at all. In fact, it was a little twisted. Any naughty child in preschool would probably be able to draw it better than this. That's right. This is the secret mark of our freedom metropolis. Although Misaka Mikoto deliberately suppressed it, Guhan could still hear the excitement in Misaka Mikoto's heart through Qingpin's ears. Guhan is asking you how you could be sure that it was drawn by your people. Qingpin, who was in the nursery pouch, began to relay Guhan's words weakly. Guhan said that there are graffiti on things like fists in many places. It might not have been drawn here by people from Freedom Metropolis. No, take a closer look. This is not as simple as a simple fist. Misaka Makoto gently brushed past the graffiti. Can't you see that there are 6 fingers on this fist? It's true. When Qingpin heard that, he quickly poked his head out and carefully counted the fist graffiti. There were indeed 6 fingers on it. Even if it's not 6 fingers, I believe that it's a secret mark left behind by people from Freedom Metropolis. There's only one person in the entire Freedom Metropolis who can draw a fist in such a style. Misaka Makoto was so excited that the electric current on her body flickered. It seemed like she had returned to the state where she lost control of her electric current. Guhan is asking you, what does this secret mark mean? What are they trying to convey to you? Qingpin continued to act as a messenger. Since this mark was indeed left behind by someone from the Freedom Metropolis, it meant that that person must have some important news or something to tell his man. Guhan knew that every force had their own secret message system. Different secret messages could be passed on. Although this message was very general, the general meaning could still be passed on. I don't know. Misaka Makoto's eyebrows twitched. Although my friend's drawing style is well known in Liberty City for being easy to recognize, the meaning behind her drawing style is also well known for being difficult to decipher. I don't know what she's trying to say. It looks like I'm here, but it also looks like I'm already gone. I really can't tell. F***CK. Qingpin complained, then immediately added, this is also what Guhan said. This freelancer was really a genius. To be able to draw 2 completely different secret messages, I'm here and I'm already gone, on the same drawing at the same time. In a sense, he was also a genius. Don't worry. Although Chu Chun's drawing skills aren't that great, she's a very meticulous person. She'll definitely leave other clues around here. Misaka Makoto said as she began to search for clues that her friend might have left behind. This area was probably used by Fort Yuyang to dispose of all sorts of trash. After a thorough search, Misaka Makoto and Shinjio did not find anything else other than a dozen garbage dumps that emitted a pungent smell due to the fact that they had not been cleaned for a long time. Perhaps it was because the place was too smelly. The demonic beasts, Yuan-ko, rarely appeared in this area. Their noses were very sensitive, and they could not withstand the smell at all. In a sense, if one wanted to hide something, this was indeed a good place to do so. Misaka Makoto was very serious in her search. She could not wait to flip through every corner and even ran into the garbage dumps to take a look. However, Qingpin was not as focused. In less than 30 seconds, her attention was completely attracted by the birds in the sky, the flowers on the trees, and the grass on the ground. This made Guhan, who shared Qingpin's perspective, extremely helpless. He could only look at the world from a child's perspective. However, most of the time, only a child's perspective would be able to find clues that were on the surface. At this time, Qingpin's gaze was fixed on a tall apple tree that was full of bright red apples. Ever since Qingpin discovered the apple tree, her gaze had never left it. To be exact, she had never left the apples on the tree because the color of the apples was too beautiful. It was a color that looked delicious. Thanks to Qingpin's long gaze, Guhan suddenly noticed something strange about the apple tree. The location of the apple tree was very strange. It was located in the middle of a road. Looking at the size of the apple tree, it was at least 5 to 6 years old. No matter how lazy the people in Yang Fortress were, it was impossible for them to let an apple tree grow in the middle of a road for 5 to 6 years. Moreover, looking at the roots of the apple tree, pieces of the cement road had exploded. It looked as if the tree had forcefully broken through the ground. It was definitely not a touching example of a seed falling into a crack in the cement and growing tenaciously. It looked more like an apple tree that was nurtured by some kind of magic. Hey, Guhan, eat an apple. Suddenly, Qingpin pinched Misaka Makoto's mantu. Qingpin, what are you doing? Misaka Makoto blushed. She grabbed Qingpin's cheeks with both her hands and rubbed them forcefully. However, thanks to Qingpin, Misaka Makoto finally shifted her gaze to the apple tree. It was fine if she did not look at it, but once she did, she could not take her eyes off the apple tree. I can feel it. This is Chu Chun's power. This is an apple tree that was nurtured by Chu Chun's power, Misaka Makoto said excitedly. As expected, the apple tree was nurtured. Misaka Makoto's words confirmed Guhan's guess. This must be a clue that Chu Chun left for me. But what is she trying to tell me by nurturing an apple tree? After the initial excitement, Misaka Makoto began to think about the meaning behind the apple tree. What is Chu Chun trying to tell me through this apple tree? Tell me, is the fruit on this apple tree delicious? Or tell me that her underwear today has an apple pattern. Damn tears, I've been led astray by her. Misaka Makoto's mind was filled with all sorts of strange ideas. Unfortunately, none of them were useful. Just as Misaka Makoto was at her wit's end, Qingpin suddenly pinched the soft flesh on his back. She seemed to be addicted to pinching. Guhan said to look at the ground. Since this apple tree came out from the ground, then maybe the secret is hidden underground. Qingpin repeated Guhan's words. Misaka Makoto did not have the time to pinch Qingpin's cheeks anymore. She squatted down and placed one of her hands on the ground. An electric current quickly flowed through the cement floor to the entire underground space. A minute later, Misaka Makoto raised her head in surprise and said to Qingpin, "There's a space 100 meters underground. I've detected active electronic signals. There's a living person in that space. It must be Chu Chun. She's down there." Gahan said that there might be a problem here. Fort Yuyang doesn't have any underground shelters. He hopes that you won't act rashly and that you'll take a good look around. Qingpin said, "I can't wait any longer. Let's go." Misaka Makoto was not in the mood to care about that. She waved her hand in the air, and the void door was pulled open. She carried Qingpin and entered the void door. When the void door opened again, she and Qingpin appeared in a dark, damp space with only a few weak emergency lights. Gahan told you to stay alert. There might be an ambush here. Qingpin continued to repeat Gahan's words. Very quickly, Gahan, who had borrowed her vision, stopped talking about ambushes. That was because the small space was filled with humans. Most of them were dispirited. Their eyes were empty and their pupils were unfocused. They looked as if they had been played to death. Even Misaka Makoto's sudden appearance did not cause much of a stir. "Chu Chun, are you here? Chu Chun?" Misaka Makoto asked excitedly. However, she was just lying to herself because she was certain that Chu Chun was not here the moment she entered this space. Although there was Chu Chun's aura in this space, Chu Chun must have been here before. "Hey, I think I heard a girl's voice. She's calling for Master Chu Chun," a broken sword wielder said to the person next to him. "I didn't. You heard wrong. You're just dreaming." The other person said weakly, "We need to save our energy, empty our minds, and reduce our activities. That way, we can live for a few more days." "Oh, you're right. Empty our minds, reduce our activities," the sword wielder said slowly, as if he was hypnotized. "You two, let me ask you, what happened here? Did Chu Chun appear here before?" The conversation between the two did not escape Misaka Makoto's ears. Misaka Makoto walked toward the two of them and gave them a kick on the body. "Hey, brother, I think someone kicked me." "No, you didn't. This is just your imagination. You fainted from hunger. Looks like I'll have to use some strength." A few black lines appeared on Misaka Makoto's forehead. A golden electric arc danced in her palm. Chapter 494. A wave of golden electricity passed through the corpse-like bodies. These unlucky children immediately jumped up from the ground. Their eyes were no longer silent, and their pupils were focused as well. Their vitality had returned to their bodies. "Who's that? Why are you releasing electricity?" A hot-tempered person started cursing. "Mother asterisk her. Can't you just let me die in peace? Can I die peacefully in this day and age?" Another person whined. After the initial chaos, the people who had been reactivated finally realized that there was one more person among them. It was a woman who was filled with dimensional energy and was definitely not a normal human. Oh no, Yuan Ko is here. Everyone, prepare for battle. The swordsmen released their sword maidens at the same time. Then, more than 40 sword maidens appeared in the small space. The entire space was crowded with people. It was difficult to even stand properly, let alone fight. Very good. It seems like all of you are energetic now. Most of the sword maidens were either saber-class or saber-class sword maidens. Misaka Makoto did not care about them at all. Withdraw your sword maidens. I'm not here to attack you. I'm a free agent. A free person? The swordsmen were in an uproar when they heard Misaka Makoto call herself a free person. After a while, the leader of the artifact sword maidens asked loudly, "You say you're a free person. Why should we believe that you're a free person? Show us the mark on your body and let us scan it. Then, we'll believe that you're a free person." As mentioned before, free people had a special mark on their body. After being scanned by their personal terminal, they would be able to prove that they were free people. Misaka Makoto's mark was on her shoulder, which was not a very private part of her body. But for a girl like her to expose her shoulders in front of so many men, no matter how she thought about it, it was a very uncomfortable thing. Therefore, Misaka Makoto rejected the request. She waved her hand in the air, and a void door appeared out of thin air. It's a void door. She's a universe-level Yuan Ko. Oh my god, I'm actually seeing the second universe, grade Yuan Ko. Seeing the appearance of this void gate, all the sword bearers were in an uproar. This was because the void gate was the best way to prove one's strength. Only immortal sword tier sword wielder and above, or universe tier Yuan Ko and above, could open the void and open the void gate. Other than that, there were no other sword bearers or Yuan Ko who could do this. Therefore, the moment these sword bearers saw the void gate, they were sure that the person in front of them was either Yuan Ko or the sword bearer. At the very least, they were at the universe realm. After this was confirmed, the hostile atmosphere in the air dissipated a lot. This was because the people with the swords knew that they were no match for Yuan Ko, who was only at the universe realm. With just one move, he could send all of them to the Western Paradise to pray to the Buddha. Sir, are you really a free man? If the person in front of them was a universe-level Yuan Ko, there would be no need to waste time talking. He could just kill all of them. However, the person in front of them was patient enough to talk to them. This made the sword bearers believe that Misaka Makoto was a free man. After all, they were saved by a free man. I'm a free man. Don't worry, I won't hurt you. Misaka Makoto forced a smile. Please recall your sword maidens. I have something to ask all of you. Brothers, put away your sword ladies. I'm about to be squeezed to death. One of the sword bearers joked. Instantly, the atmosphere eased up. Each of the sword bearers put away their sword ladies, and Misaka Makoto started communicating with the sword bearers. After more than 10 minutes of conversation, Misaka Makoto and Gahan, who had been listening from the side, finally understood the whole story. I'm not sure if everyone still remembers that when Yang Fortress had just fallen, Misaka Makoto's friend, one of the universe-level free men, Updraft, contacted Zhu Wudao and told him that the free men were being threatened. He also told him that more than 40 sword bearers were secretly saved by the free men and were hidden somewhere in the hopes that Yuzhong City could rescue them. In the end, Zhu Wudao considered that more sword bearers would be sacrificed in order to rescue them and rejected Updraft's request. Hence, the sword bearers were forgotten. It was only when Misaka Makoto was looking for clues about the free men that she coincidentally came to this place. According to the memories of these sword bearers, a total of 3 freemen had saved them. In the chaos, they had saved these heavily injured sword bearers, then broke through the void and brought them here. After that, the 3 freemen had never appeared again, and no one knew where they had gone. Misaka Makoto let out a deep sigh when she heard that the 3 free men were no longer here. Although this was within her expectations, she still hoped that a miracle would happen. On one side, Misaka Makoto was trying to understand the situation. On the other side, under Guhan's command, poor Scholar walked to the edge of the narrow space. As far as Guhan knew, Fort Yuyang did not have an underground shelter. Since Yang Fortress was a military fortress for the sword bearers, there were very few civilians. There was no value in building an underground shelter. Hence, Gohan was very curious about where the underground shelter came from. After a round of careful observation, Gohan finally discovered that this underground shelter was very likely to have been dug out on the spot, and it was made in less than 3 minutes. That was because an underground shelter built by humans must have a complete access system, ventilation system, heating system, food storage system, life support system, oxygen production system, and a series of other systems to ensure the safety of the people in the underground shelter. It was to prevent the shelter from turning into a morgue. However, there was only one space in this underground space. Other than that, there were no other auxiliary systems. This place was equivalent to a huge underground coffin without ventilation holes. There was not even enough oxygen to sustain a human survival. Lu Zilong wondered how the sword-bearers survived without oxygen for a month. Looking at the walls of the space, Lu Zilong realized that it was not a layer of soil. Instead, it felt like glass. It must have taken a lot of time to make a wall out of glass, right? On the contrary, it was actually the easiest thing to do. As long as the soil was heated to a high temperature, the soil could be easily turned into glass. That was the most basic chemical formula. Hey, Gohan wants me to tell you that someone must have dug out a space and burned the soil layer at high temperature to form something like glass. It was used to support the space so that it would not collapse. Pin returned to Misaka Mikoto and told her about Gohan's discovery. It's Blackie and Chu-chan. Misaka Mikoto quickly explained, Hey, Z must have used her teleportation ability to teleport the soil here. Then, she asked Chu-chan to heat up the soil layer and turn it into glaze. Hey Z and Chu-chan must have saved them. That must be it. That's right. It's Master Blackie, Master Chu-chan, and Master Lazy who saved us. At that time, a tall man walked over weakly. You must be Master Misaka Mikoto. I'm Gue-e, a famed sword-level swordsman under the pleated sword spirit. Greetings, Master Misaka Mikoto. The weak man bowed to Misaka Mikoto. There's no need for that. All of you look like you're in bad shape. What's going on? Misaka Mikoto held on to Gue-e and made him sit down. The famed sword-level swordsman smiled bitterly. To tell you the truth, Master Misaka Mikoto, we've been out of food for 5 days. Moreover, the oxygen in the medical chamber is running low. If you guys had come a few days later, we would have committed suicide by poisoning ourselves. The ambush was too sudden. The swordsmen had started the battle in a leisurely manner. Naturally, they would not store too much food in their dimensional pockets. Many of their dimensional pockets were empty. However, it was a complete tragedy when they arrived at the sanctuary. When the swordsmen gathered all their food together, they realized that even if they only ate once a day, they could only last for about 20 days. Oxygen was a huge problem. Misaka Mikoto's friends did not have professional construction engineers. They did not even consider the problem of ventilation when they built the sanctuary. It was not until all of them had left that the remaining swordsmen realized that they were running out of oxygen. Fortunately, the medical chamber had an oxygen-producing function. They managed to survive by using the oxygen produced by the medical chamber. However, the medical chamber used chemicals to produce oxygen. It could not last for a long time. Now that a month had passed, there were not many chemicals left in the medical chamber. Soon, the place would completely run out of oxygen. Therefore, when Misaka Mikoto entered the sanctuary, everyone was stunned and silent. They did not seem to care about what was going on outside. That was because they could only survive by staying in that state as little food and oxygen as possible. What's the point of holding on here? Suddenly, Pin said, You should know that Yuzhong City will not send anyone to save you. Gohan said so. In an instant, the entire place fell into dead silence. Pin, you brat. How could you say what I'm thinking? Gohan, who was hiding in Pin's body, was completely speechless. That was right. He had said that in his heart. He did not want Pin to say it out loud. However, Pin had said it out loud. This made Gohan feel extremely awkward. The entire sanctuary fell into dead silence. That was because Pin had revealed the problem that every swordsman did not dare to think about. Yuzhong can forget about us, but we can't forget about Yuzhong. After a long silence, Gue Yi suddenly said something that shocked everyone. This was the swordsman, the people of Yuzhong City. Chapter 495. Gohan wants me to ask you if you can bring him here through the Void Gate. Through Qing Pin's eyes, Gohan saw such a loyal and great swordsman. Even the cold and indifferent Gohan felt his blood boil. He desperately wanted to come here to the group of swordsmen and bring them home. Gohan, you want to come here? Misaka Makoto frowned when she heard Gohan's words. But I can. But if I open the Void Gate from the inside, I won't be able to hide it from Hercules. He will know that I have regained my strength. Gohan said that he felt the pressure from Yuan Ko in the command center had disappeared. Hercules has left Fort Yeyang. You can bring him here now, Qing Pin said. Hercules has left? Misaka Makoto was shocked. This should be the time when Hercules was most hesitant to leave Fort Yeyang. How could Hercules have left? Since Hercules had left, she would bring Gohan here. It would be more appropriate for him to deal with the swordsman. Misaka Makoto did not want to waste her time. Misaka Makoto opened the Void Gate again and brought Gohan back from the other side. The survivors had always thought that Qing Pin was a swordsman like Misaka Makoto. However, when Qing Pin mentioned Gohan to Misaka Makoto, they realized that Qing Pin was a sword mistress, and that Gohan was most likely Qing Pin's swordsman. Sure enough, when Gohan walked out of the Void Gate, the swordsman confirmed that he was their compatriot. It seemed that Gohan and Misaka Makoto had a special relationship. Some people with sharp eyes could see something interesting in Misaka Makoto's eyes when she looked at Gohan. They immediately admired Gohan. This brother of theirs was not an ordinary person. To be able to get a universe-level swordsman was a great achievement. Putting aside the strange thoughts in these people's minds, when Gohan appeared in the shelter, he heard a familiar voice calling his name. Master Gohan! Master Gohan! I didn't expect to see you again. Master Gohan! It was a very familiar voice. Gohan was sure that he had heard this voice before. He looked toward the source of the voice and saw an old man lying on the ground. This person was much older than the last time Gohan saw him. Previously, his hair could only be described as gray, but now it had completely turned into silver white. His skin had shrunk to the size of towel and was full of wrinkles. The most important part was his leg, which was broken at the knee and wrapped in a thick layer of bandages. Uncle Huang. Your Uncle Huang. Gohan called out the name of the swordsman. He wasn't sure if everyone remembered this Uncle Huang, but he was Yi Wenjun's last retainer. Because he couldn't follow Yi Wenjun to the training array, he was left behind in Fort Yeyang. Yi Wenjun had told Gohan and Song Yifei about her worries about Uncle Huang. She could only pray that he had successfully escaped from Fort Yeyang. She didn't expect Uncle Huang to be here. In the end, he didn't listen to Yi Wenjun's prayers and escaped, but luckily he survived. I didn't expect to see Master Gohan again. Although his legs were gone, Uncle Huang still smiled happily. Then, he suddenly thought of something and asked, Master Gohan, how is young Master Wenjun? Is he okay? Is he injured? Is he sick? I don't know. Gohan shook his head and answered honestly. We parted ways in Hubei. He went straight back to Yuzhong City. However, I can guarantee that Yi Wenjun was fine when we parted. He wasn't hurt at all. That's great. That's great. Uncle Huang smiled even more happily when he heard Gohan's words. It was obvious that this old man had devoted all his feelings to Yi Wenjun. This made Gohan feel a little emotional and even a little envious. This was the legacy of the Jinni clan. Only the Jinni clan could have such a loyal servant. Who knew if Gohan would have such a person in the future? Old Huang, don't tell me this little brother is the new swordsman that you've always told us about who has recently coordinated with Lady Heaven Reliance? That's right. I seem to remember Old Huang mentioning that the person who synchronized with a heavenly sword is called Gohan. I always thought it was a joke. Is there really someone in this world who can synchronize with a heavenly sword? As Uncle Huang and Gohan conversed, the atmosphere in the refuge became even more heated. Based on what the other sword wielders said, they actually knew the name Guhan, and that Guhan had synchronized with the heavenly sword. The news of Guhan synchronizing with the heavenly sword was considered secret. Yuzhong City hadn't announced this to all the sword wielder, so apart from a few well-informed people, most of the sword wielder didn't know about this. Furthermore, Fort Yuyang had been attacked a few days after Guhan synchronized with the heavenly sword. This news hadn't been widely spread, so the sword wielder here probably didn't know about Guhan, Yuzhong City's new superstar. They also didn't know that Guhan had suppressed all the sword wielder in the trial array and obtained the Emperor's sword. Guhan had made it onto the white list of the human higher-ups and had become a target that they paid close attention to. Sir Guhan, I'm sorry. I spoke nonsense without your permission. Please don't take it to heart, Uncle Huang said embarrassedly. These sword wielder had been here for almost 30 days without any other activities. They could only rely on chatting to pass the time. Chatting naturally required topics, but Uncle Huang was an honest man. How could he have so many topics to talk about? He thought that he was probably going to die here and that Guhan would probably never know what had been said in this refuge. Thus, Uncle Huang told them about Guhan synchronizing with the heavenly sword as big news. As expected, it caused a heated discussion among the sword wielder. However, Uncle Huang never thought that there would be hope for him to be saved. Moreover, he never thought that the person who saved him would be Guhan. This made Uncle Huang so ashamed that he didn't know where to put his face. It's all right, Uncle Huang. You didn't say anything bad about me. It's not a big deal. Guhan comforted Uncle Huang. In fact, Guhan secretly hoped that someone could spread his name far and wide. He wasn't the kind of person who didn't want to be famous and liked to play the pig to eat the tiger. On the contrary, Guhan was someone who desperately wanted to be famous. Only a great reputation could allow Guhan to realize his ambition. Uncle Huang telling these people about Guhan just happened to match Guhan's thoughts. He couldn't possibly let Guhan stand out and brag about himself. So, Guhan didn't even have time to thank Uncle Huang. Why would he blame him? So, Brother Guhan, you really synchronized with Lady Heavenly Sword? Hearing the conversation between Guhan and Uncle Huang, these sword wielders' gossipy hearts were instantly ignited. This guy called Guhan was synchronizing with Lady Heavenly Sword. Lady Heavenly Sword had never had a sword wielder in 350 years. No matter what, they had to take a look. Brother Guhan, hurry up and release your Lady Heavenly Sword. Let everyone have a look. Another person shouted. That's right. As long as we can see Lady Heavenly Sword in the flesh, our lives will be worth it even if we die. The topic of Lady Heavenly Sword instantly ignited the atmosphere in the sanctuary. Everyone was clamoring for Guhan to show off his Lady Heavenly Sword. Seeing that, Misaka Mikoto revealed an amused smile. Then, she took the initiative to stand beside Guhan and let Guhan have the center of attention. Gu, if you dare to release me, don't even think about commanding me anymore. Although Lady Heavenly Sword was in the scabbard, she could still sense the situation outside. Guhan did not seal off Lady Heavenly Sword's senses of the outside world. Therefore, when she heard the sword wielder shouting that they wanted to see her, Lady Heavenly Sword immediately threatened Guhan loudly. She definitely could not release her, as she did not want to be watched like a monkey. I'm sorry, everyone is too enthusiastic. Lady Heavenly Sword is too embarrassed to come out and see everyone. Hearing Lady Heavenly Sword's threat, Guhan did not mind at all. He did not plan to release Lady Heavenly Sword to show off. Otherwise, what kind of person would Guhan be? A piece of trash who uses Lady Heavenly Sword to show off? Guhan did not want to establish such an image in the other sword wielders' hearts. However, at that time, everyone was very excited. If he did not satisfy them, it would hurt his image. Therefore, Guhan had to divert their emotions. Therefore, Guhan continued, I believe that we'll have the chance to meet again in the future. It won't be too late to meet Lady Heavenly Sword again then. However, right now, I'm afraid our most important task isn't to see Lady Heavenly Sword, but to find a way to fill our stomachs. Guhan smiled and waved his hand. The potatoes, sweet potatoes, and corn kernels that he had collected from the warehouse instantly appeared in front of everyone. The world is big, but the stomach is the biggest. Fill your stomach first. Then you'll have the strength to survive. Gulp. Looking at the food, everyone could not help but gulp. It was as if they were 24-year-old virgins who saw a naked woman who had lost her virginity. Looking at the sword wielder's eyes, Guhan knew that his position as the leader of the sword wielder had been established. Chapter 496. After 6 days, the pitiful swordsman finally had a hot meal. Although the food was just plain roasted potatoes and handlebar potatoes, and the only side dish was the pickled vegetables that Gahan had left behind, the swordsman wolfed down the food and praised it as the most delicious food they had ever eaten in their lives. Gahan wondered if their stomachs would explode when he saw how much they wanted to stuff 3 potatoes into their mouths at the same time. Let me give everyone a piece of advice. If you have not eaten for more than a day, do not overeat. That was because after a long period of starvation, the walls of the stomach would become thinner, lack of blood, and decrease in toughness. It was very easy to cause acute gastric dilatation. If one were to overeat too much and too fast, the protective function of the gag reflex would fail. Acute gastric distension would occur and one's stomach would explode. There was no doubt that it would explode like a balloon. The entire stomach would explode. Wouldn't it be a comical feeling? After everyone had eaten and drunk their fill, the leader of the swordsmen, Gei, took the initiative to walk toward Gahan and Misaka Mikoto. He bowed to them and thanked them sincerely. Then, all the swordsmen followed Gei and bowed to Gahan to thank him. No, all of you are my seniors. It's only right for me to do this. It's only right, Guhan said hurriedly. He acted like he was a sensible junior. It was completely different from Gohan, who was usually cold to others. However, the swordsman insisted on bowing to Gohan thrice. Gohan quickly grabbed Guei's arm and said sincerely, "Seniors, even if I've done something for you, it's not the time to thank me yet. Once I've rescued all of you from this place, I'll be able to accept it with a clear conscience. Rescue us." The swordsmen trembled when they heard Lu Zilong's words. After spending almost a month in prison, they had completely lost the thought of escaping. He was so focused on eating that he didn't think about this at all. It wasn't until Gahan pointed it out that they came to their senses. That's right, they should consider escaping. They couldn't stay in this shelter forever. "You can save us?" Guei asked subconsciously, but he quickly realized what he was talking about. The reason why they couldn't leave this place was that the universe-level freedom warrior who brought them here never came back. Without the ability to open the void gate, they couldn't leave this temporary shelter that was 100 meters underground and didn't have any exits. However, a new universe-level free being had found this place, and she was a friend of the humans. As long as she was willing, she could save everyone here. Thinking of this, Guei and all the sword-bearers felt a burning passion in their hearts. They had finally left this place of death. However, Guei quickly recovered from his excitement. He clearly understood that escaping back to Yuzhong City wasn't that simple. It wasn't as simple as escaping from the shelter. "Brother Gahan, what's the situation outside? Has Yuan-ko retreated?" Guei asked hopefully. To them, the best-case scenario was that Yuan-ko's invasion had ended and the humans had retaken Yang Fort. They only needed to use the Void Gate to return to Yang Fort, and they would be safe. From what Guei remembered, if Yuan-ko wasn't that strong, it wouldn't even take a month. It would only take a few days for the humans to retake Yang Fort. Unfortunately, Guei's hope was doomed to fail. No, Yang Fort is still under Yuan-ko's control. There's a universe-level Yuan-ko guarding this place. Other than that, there are at least 1,000 demon beasts Yuan-ko inside the fort. Gohan replied. When he was looking for the secret mark, he used Qing Pin's vision to calculate the number of demon beasts. Is that so? There's still more than 1,000 Yuan-on. Guei-one's face was a little bad. Because of the 3-party agreement, the free people could save them and leave this place, but they couldn't fight the Yuan-han. Therefore, The universe-class Yuan Hun guarding this place was their biggest threat. Without a way to deal with this universe-level Yuan Ko, as soon as they appeared in Yang Fort, they would die. Then can we ask Yuzhong City to help us? Gui Yi's face was full of hope. As long as Master Yin Xiao or Master Baiju can stall this universe-level Yuan Ko, we can escape Yang Fort. Don't count on Yuzhong City's power. Gohan smiled bitterly. Yuan Ko has already blocked all communication outside of Yuzhong City. Now, unless someone escapes back to Yuzhong City, they won't be able to contact the two immortal sword wielders. However, Yuzhong City is in a difficult situation. If Yi Wenjun and the others bring the news back to Yuzhong City, then all of Yuzhong City's attention will be focused on the situation in Miling Mountain Range. I'm afraid they won't have time to care about us. What did you say? What news? Why would Yuzhong City's attention be on Miling Mountain Range? Gui Yi threw 3 questions at Gohan. Gohan could only smile bitterly. Sorry, I can't tell you the answers to these questions. Without Yuzhong City's permission, it's a top secret. Then what do we do? Gui Yi sat back down. With the universe-level Yuan Ko guarding here and Yuzhong City unable to send any reinforcements, do we really have to wait here like idiots? No, you still have a chance. Misaka Makoto, who had been silent all this while, suddenly said to Gohan, Hercules contacted me just now. He said that Loki wants to see me now. I'm going to Miling Mountain Range now. So, Hercules went to see Loki himself. Gohan heard Misaka Makoto's words and remembered that Hercules had suddenly left the command center. He immediately pulled Misaka Makoto to a corner and whispered to her. Hercules must have noticed that you are very suspicious. He might have told Loki. If you go there rashly, you'll fall into Loki's trap. Gohan reminded Misaka Makoto. In fact, Gohan felt that Hercules did not tell on Loki because Hercules had always regarded Loki as his good friend. It's okay. With my strength, even 5 Lokis can't do anything to me. I have to go to Loki, find out where my friends are, and rescue them. Misaka Makoto's words were very firm. Gohan tactfully did not say anything else. What about you, Brother Gohan? What are you going to do? Are you going to see Loki with me? Or are you going to stay here? Misaka Makoto threw the question to Gohan. According to Gohan's original plan, if Misaka Makoto wanted to see Loki, he would go with Misaka Makoto and secretly give her advice. At the same time, he would borrow Misaka Makoto's power to destroy these Yuan Kos. However, the sudden appearance of these sword-bearers had disrupted Gohan's plan. Gohan had to choose between Misaka Makoto and these sword-bearers. I'll stay here. Without me, I'm afraid the fate of these sword-bearers. Gohan hesitated for a while and made his final decision. However, he still had a few words of advice for Misaka Makoto. Sister Makoto, listen to my advice. If Loki appears in front of you, don't say a word. Kill him immediately and your friends won't be in any danger. You mustn't talk too much to Loki. You'll be tricked by his words. He's too cunning. Understand? Don't worry. With my intelligence, Loki won't be tricked. After saying that, Misaka Makoto drew a line in the air, leaving behind a void door that led to the ground. She then disappeared into the void. My sister, it's because you're not that smart that I'm worried that you'll be tricked by Loki's words. Gohan slapped his head painfully. He began to regret his decision. He should have gone to see Loki with Misaka Makoto. The sword bearers were not that important. As long as they had enough food and oxygen, they wouldn't be in any danger. Unfortunately, Misaka Makoto had already left. She had probably set off with Hercules to the Meiling mountain range. Gohan could not catch up with them even if he wanted to. Gohan could only do what he had to do. He brought the sword bearers out of Fort Yuyang and returned to Yuzhong City. On the apple tree in Fort Yuyang, the thick branches blocked the faint void door. The magical beasts, Yuan Ko, did not notice the presence of such a deadly thing. A few minutes later, an apple fell from the tree that was full of ripe red apples. Oh no, it was a solid cold. Gohan looked around cautiously. After confirming that Yuan Ko was not around, he waved his hand at the void door. The rest of the sword bearers jumped down one by one, including Uncle Huang, who had a bad leg. With the help of 2 other sword bearers, he also jumped out of the void door. Master Gue, you're the most familiar with this place. Can you tell me how to get to the hidden workshop you mentioned? Guhan asked Gue as they walked side by side. According to the plan that Guhan and Gue had come up with, the most important thing was to find a workshop to help the sword bearers repair their sword maidens. The sword bearers' sword maidens' durability had been mostly destroyed during the battle a month ago. It was only a facade that they could summon 40 sword maidens at once. In reality, their sword maidens' durability was less than 20% and would shatter with a single touch. That was why before Gahan led them out of Yang City, he had to find a way to repair their sword maidens. Chapter 497. In the layout of Fort Yuyang, the workshops responsible for repairing and recasting sword maidens were all located on the same street. This was because it was more convenient. However, right now, that street happened to be the most crowded place for Yuan Ko. If Gohan led these sword maidens there, he would be courting death. Fortunately, Gue said that he knew of a single workshop. It wasn't on that street, but in a small building near the trash area. I'll scout ahead. Senior Gue, I'll have to trouble you to guard the path of retreat. Guhan did a head count. There were a total of 44 sword bearers in the sanctuary. Among them, 40 sword bearer sword ladies were either damaged or unusable. Only Gue and 3 other sword bearer sword ladies were undamaged and could be used. Thus, Gohan took on the task of scouting ahead, while Gue and the other 3 were responsible for guarding the path of retreat and ensuring the safety of the group in the middle. There was nothing much to say about the battles along the way. Gohan encountered quite a number of demonic beast origin silhouettes. Most of them were ghost and soul silhouettes. He even encountered 2 flood dragon origin silhouettes. They could either breathe fire or water. There was even one that could create illusions. However, in the face of Guhan's heaven-reliant sword, all of them were instantly sucked back into the dimensional vortex. After all, Gohan's heavenly sword had already reached the 1st grade. It also had the support of the Doyu sword. In addition, Gohan's swordsmanship was extremely exquisite. Instantly killing a few insignificant magical beasts was a very normal thing. This was very normal in Gohan's mind. However, in the eyes of the 44 spectators, it was a shocking and inconceivable matter. In their hearts, this battle towards the workshop would definitely be a bitter one. They might even be surrounded by Yuan Ko. Everyone here was prepared to be killed by Yuan Ko on the way to the workshop. However, they had never thought that a treasure sword tier sword wielder would be able to use this kind of crazy speed to slaughter in Yuan Shun of the same level, or even a small realm higher. The Flood Dragon Yuan Shun, which was equivalent to a famed sword tier sword wielder, could only last a dozen or so seconds under Guhan's sword. After a dazzling flash of sword light, the Flood Dragon Yuan Shun demon beast turned into a corpse and was sucked back into the dimensional vortex. Not a single drop of blood was left on Guhan's body, causing everyone to gasp in amazement. Master Gue, if your famed sword maiden was still here, would she be able to do this? One of the sword maidens who was guarding the retreat with Gue asked curiously. Just now, they had worked together and spent a lot of effort to kill a soul tier Yuan Ko that charged out of the building. In the end, when they turned around to look at Gahan, good heavens, in the time it took them to kill this soul tier Yuan Ko magical beast, 5 Yuan Ko magical beast had already fallen to Gahan's sword. I can't do it. Gue smiled bitterly. That Flood Dragon tier Yuan Ko magical beast just now, even if I was at my peak, I would need at least 3 minutes to kill it. A dozen or so seconds. I can't do it even if you beat me to death. But that Gahan is only a sword maiden, right? This sword maiden asked dumbly. He's only a sword maiden. How can he compare to you? A famed sword maiden? There are always people with extraordinary talent in this world, just like Shatian Jindi, Longevity Jindi, and Bai Jindi. When they were sword maidens, they could completely crush Flood Dragon tier and Dragon tier Yuan Ko magical beasts. Gue sighed. But they're all Jinni magical beasts. This sword maiden continued to ask, isn't this a natural thing for them? When they were sword maidens, how could they know that they would become genie magical beasts in the future? How can you be so sure that this Gohan magical beast won't become genie magical beast in the future? Guei sighed, his eyes shining with hope. Perhaps our human race is about to give birth to another great expert. I can almost see his future. It's so dazzling and unstoppable. Remember, it's very possible that we're in a period of history that will be praised by future generations, if this Gohan magical beast doesn't die. With Gohan magical beast leading the way with all his might, the entire team reached the single recasting workshop that Guei mentioned at an astonishing speed. However, what they didn't expect was that there were a few shadow wolves hiding in the workshop. Their attack power wasn't outstanding, but they could hide in the shadows, which was equivalent to being in a semi-invisible state. One of the sword-bearers carelessly walked into the shadows of the shadowy wolves and was torn to shreds on the spot, becoming the first casualty of the group that broke away. The number of people in the group also decreased from 44 to 43. Very quickly, the Sword Maidens reacted and chopped these shadow wolves into minced meat, sending them back into the dimensional vortex. Unfortunately, this dead Sword Maidens could no longer save him. After all, he was a friend who had lived together for almost a month. All the Sword Maidens' eyes were red as they collected this unlucky fellow's corpse and stored it in his medical pod. Then, they placed it in their own dimensional pockets, preparing to bring it back to Yuzhong City for burial. This was the only thing these Sword Maidens could do for him. Regarding this, Gohan also deeply blamed himself. He thought that he had already calculated everything and everything was under control. However, his actual combat experience was still too little. If he was a veteran Sword Maiden who had experienced all kinds of battles, he would definitely check the shadows to see if there were any abnormalities and definitely wouldn't enter the shadows so easily. Following that, Gohan checked the entire recasting workshop inside and out. After confirming that there wouldn't be a second batch of invisible Yuan Ko hiding here, he finally started busy repairing the Sword Maidens. This recasting workshop was quite well preserved. Most of the tools were still in place, and it didn't seem like Yuan Ko had been here at all. It was precisely because of this that Gohan neglected to investigate the entire workshop. However, since the tools were all good, he could quickly start repairing the Sword Maidens. Generally speaking, recasting or repairing Sword Maidens required a professional sword blacksmith. However, the profession of sword blacksmith and sword wielder conflicted with each other. Once one became a sword wielder, they would lose the ability to be a sword blacksmith. Therefore, among the remaining 43 sword wielder, none of them could be called a sword blacksmith. Fortunately, if it was just a simple repair of durability, then as long as there was someone who knew the repair process, it could be barely repaired. For example, the guy standing in front of the furnace was called Li Zipping. It was said that he was born in a family of sword blacksmiths. However, he didn't want to inherit his father's business. Instead, he was determined to be a sword wielder. In the end, he was lucky enough to really synchronize an artificial sword maiden and become a sword wielder. After all, he had been influenced by the recasting workshop since he was young, so he deeply understood every step of a sword blacksmith's repair process. Li Zipong first took out an artifact sword that was the least damaged and threw it into the furnace. The extremely high temperature of the furnace dyed the artifact sword a reddish-orange color. This was actually a sign that the metal inside was already in a half-melted state. When the orange-red color reached a critical point, Li Zipping suddenly pulled the sword lady out of the furnace. He quickly took out a dimensional crystal and threw it onto the blade. The moment the dimensional crystal came into contact with the blade, it melted into the blade like ice. The entire blade quickly cooled down and finally returned to its original silver-white appearance. However, compared to when it first entered the furnace, the man-made sword lady, which was originally covered in cracks, had already recovered to its original state. It was as perfect as new, as if it had never been injured. The owner of this sword maiden immediately took her sword maiden back into his hands. Then, with a flash of light, a pretty little girl was released, and he hugged her and kissed her. Yes, This was the advantage of artificial sword maidens. They wouldn't resist anything the sword wielder asked them to do. Who knew what it meant to resist, but they didn't have their own souls. Your skills are amazing. I've never seen anyone repair a sword maiden so quickly. Gahan walked to Li Zipeng's side and praised him. Brother Gahan, you're overpraising me. This is just a small trick of mine. You're the amazing one. You killed such a terrifying flood dragon Yuan Ko in a dozen or so seconds. I'm the one who really admires you. When Li Zipeng saw Gahan appear beside him, there was a hint of excitement in his eyes. He had a faint feeling that he was going to become Guhan's diehard fan. After all, the battle where Guhan slaughtered Yuan Ko just now looked too perfect, so perfect that it was like a dance. No problem. We can learn from each other. Gahan smiled. Actually, I've always had a question. Why are you sword blacksmiths and sword wielder incompatible like fire and water? Why can't sword blacksmiths become sword wielder and sword wielder can't become sword blacksmiths? Why can't you repair these sword maidens now? Gohan asked a question he had never cared about before. He only knew that sword blacksmiths couldn't become sword wielder, but Gohan didn't really understand the reason behind it. How should I put it? Li Zipeng scratched his head. Because the simple repair of the sword maiden only requires the sword maiden to melt and then put in a dimensional crystal. But this isn't the real role of a sword blacksmith. The main job of a sword blacksmith isn't to repair sword maidens, but to forge artificial sword maidens. Forging artificial sword maidens is a very complicated process. The core step is to inject pure sword essence into the forged sword embryo to nurture the spirituality of the artificial sword maiden. To put it bluntly, pure sword essence is the sword essence in a sword blacksmith's body. It's a sword essence that hasn't been marked by any aura. Once a sword blacksmith has his own sword maiden, the sword essence in his body will have his own aura and will no longer be pure sword essence. Only the sword blacksmith can successfully synchronize and coordinate the sword maiden forged this way. Other sword wielder can't synchronize and coordinate it at all. That's why sword blacksmiths can't become sword wielder and can't have their own sword maiden. Otherwise, the sword blacksmith will lose the pure sword essence in his body. Chapter 498. Zhang Zipeng was indeed a sword wielder from a family of swordsmiths. Although he had not been a swordsmith for many years, repairing sword mothers was as smooth as flowing water in his hands. Soon, he had repaired more than 10 sword mothers. When the next sword wielder gave Zhang Zipeng his broken sword mother, Zhang Zipeng shrugged and said, "Sorry, I can't repair your sword mothers now." "Why? Is it because my floating cloud sword is too damaged?" "No, that sword was even more damaged than my floating cloud." "Didn't you repair it?" The sword wielder, who had been rejected by Zhang Zipeng, said, "No, you misunderstand. I'm not saying your sword mother is too damaged to repair. I just don't have any dimension crystals left. I can't make bricks without straw." Next, Zhang Zipeng explained to everyone that repairing the sword maidens required dimensional crystal shards. However, Zhang Zipeng had used up all the dimensional crystal shards in his dimensional pocket. Without dimensional crystal shards, Zhang Zipeng could not repair the remaining dozens of sword maidens. Who has extra dimension crystals in their dimensional pockets? Take them out. I know dimension crystals are expensive, and it's a big loss to give them away. But if you guys want to escape, you'll have to recover. Comrade Zhang Zipeng had just silently used his dimensional crystal to repair the sword lady for everyone. But didn't she complain at all? Everyone, don't be stingy with these dimensional crystals. Those who have dimensional crystals, take them out. Seeing this, Gue Yi called for everyone to take out their dimension crystals. Gue Yi took out the 2 barren dimension crystals he had. Following Gue Yi's lead, the sword wielder who had dimension crystals did the same. Gohan quietly took out 5 barren dimension crystals. Dimensional crystals didn't have any outstanding effects in battle. At most, they could be used to repair sword maidens or have some auxiliary effects. Therefore, unless the sword bearers returned from the Orvanes, they would immediately hand over the dimensional crystals to Yuzhong City to exchange for various resources. Most sword bearers wouldn't have dimensional crystals in their dimensional pockets. So, even though everyone took out their dimension crystals, there weren't many left on the table. There were only 20 of them, and they were all barren dimension crystals. There weren't any barren dimension crystals, either. Guhan's dimensional pocket had a few dozen viscounts and a dozen earls. There were even marquises and dukes. But then again, dimensional crystals of the barren rank and above were too precious. No one would be willing to selflessly give them away. Guhan believed that other than himself, there should be a few other people who had barren and above dimensional crystals in their hands. What do you think? Is that enough? Gue 1 asked Zhang Zipeng with worry. 20 barren dimension crystals was enough to repair the Sword Mothers, which were twice as many as he had. It was going to be a very difficult task. Save it. Ancient Sword Mothers should be enough. Zhang Zipeng gritted his teeth and said, "But I can't do anything about the Sword Mothers. They need viscounts to repair. It doesn't matter how many barons there are. How many Sword Mothers do we have that need to be repaired? If you need them, bring out your Sword Mothers." Gue said to everyone. Very quickly, a total of 14 Sword Maidens appeared on the table. Gue 1 asked Zhang Zipeng, "Zipeng, take a look. How many viscounts do we need to repair these Sword Mothers?" Zhang Zipeng's gaze lingered on these sword ladies. After assessing the degree of damage on their bodies and the quality of the sword ladies themselves, he said, "If it's a mid-level viscount dimensional crystal stone with about 3,000 quarks of sword essence, then it'll need at least 7 of them." 7? Gue muttered to himself a few times, then took out a viscount seed from his dimensional pocket. "This is all the dimensional crystals I have. If it wasn't for the fact that I didn't exchange them the last time I came back from the mine, I wouldn't have left a viscount seed here." But it was only 1. It was far from enough for 7. Gue 1 turned around and yelled at the other sword bearers, "Stop hiding. I don't believe you don't have a single viscount seed. Don't worry, we won't take it for free. When I return to Yuzhong City, I'll transfer my hero coins to you." Return to One Sword said casually. It sounded quite imposing, and there were also hero coins as compensation. But it had the opposite effect. After Gue 1 said this, the sword bearers with viscounts were probably even more unwilling to hand over their items. No one wanted to be labeled as someone who didn't want to hand over their viscounts because of money. How could they face others in the future? Things fell into a stalemate. In the end, it was Gahan who couldn't stand it anymore. He didn't want to waste his precious time on these things. Therefore, Guhan walked in front of everyone and said sincerely, "Gue, he was too quick with his words and spoke nonsense. We've all been through thick and thin together. How could he be stingy just because of a few hero coins? It's just that he didn't react in time. Now that we're all on the same side, we really shouldn't hold a grudge over such a small matter. How about this? I have a sack here. I'll walk to everyone's side later. Everyone put their hands in it. If you have a viscount seed, you can secretly put it inside. If you don't, forget it. How about this?" As Gahan said this, he took out a sack. It was originally used to store potatoes. Now, it could be used for something else. Not bad. I think this is good. We don't have to worry about losing face. Yeah. Everyone agreed. Everyone agreed with Gahan's idea. Then, Gahan walked in front of everyone with the sack. Finally, he put the sack on the table and poured out all of the viscount seed. There were exactly 6 viscount seeds. Including Gue 1's viscount seed, there were exactly 7. How strange. This is too much of a coincidence. The number is just right. Yeah, this is really strange. Seeing this coincidental number, everyone started to discuss it. Only Guhan laughed and said to them, "This is an auspicious sign. It's not a lot, but it's just right. This is telling us that we'll have the same number as these 7, and we'll be able to rush out of the Yuyang stronghold." "I see. That's great." Fortunately, Gahan was able to link these two things together. In an instant, the atmosphere in the recasting workshop became cheerful. Although Gahan's words were very unreliable, saying that it was an auspicious sign was no different from a fart. However, when people were uncertain about their future, they loved to hear such things. Once people believed in the auspicious sign and happily carried it out, the auspicious sign would come true. While Zhang Zipeng was restoring the sword mistress, Gohan went to the second floor of the recasting workshop. From a hidden position, he peeked at the situation on the street. Although he and the others had killed many Yuan Ko along the way to get here, the Yuan Ko did not seem to realize that they had lost many of their teammates. Other than a few demons strolling around, there was nothing else worth paying attention to. What is Hercules planning? How is Misaka Makoto doing? Gohan was thinking about these things in silence. He did not seem to notice that someone had come up behind him. Out of the 6 Viscount seeds, just now, 3 of them were yours. The person who appeared behind Gohan was none other than Gue-E, the famous swordsman. How did you know? Gohan sighed and asked in return. You're still too young. Have you forgotten that if something enters the sack will at least shake a little? I've been paying attention to the sack just now. When you walked over, the sack only shook 3 times, but 6 Viscount seeds came out. Other than you, no one else could have put 3 Viscount seeds into the sack, Gue-E said, as if he was a famous detective. Sai, who said that shaking meant that a Viscount seed had been put in? In fact, the 3 of them each put 2 Viscount seeds into the sack. Although it looked like you only shook it 3 times, in fact, 6 Viscount seeds had already entered the sack. Gue-E was speechless. The 3 of them each had 2 Viscount seeds in their pockets? Wasn't that too much of a coincidence? Even if you beat Gue-E to death, he would not believe Gohan's words. But Gue-E could not refute Gohan, and that was the most frustrating thing about it. Mr. Gue-E, if you have time to think about this, why don't you think about what we should do next? Gohan smiled and put something in Gue-E's hand. What is this? Gue-E picked up the item and looked at it. It was a purple, sparkling, and translucent dimensional crystal. This is an Earl Seed. Gue-E was shocked. Gohan had given him an Earl Seed dimensional crystal, so he quickly returned it to Gohan. This is too valuable. I can't take it from you. Take it. Gue-E, I remember that your famed sword mistress was damaged as well. Gohan smiled and said, to repair a famed sword mistress, you must use an Earl Seed. Your power is crucial to our escape. Gue-E thought for a while, but he still held the Earl Seed in his hand. He put his hand on Gohan's shoulder, wanting to say something. I know. You owe me an Earl Seed. If I am ever in trouble, you must come and help me. Gohan patted Gue-E on the shoulder. There's an old saying that went, when you receive favors from others, you have to help. Chapter 499. Although Zhang Ziping's skills were extraordinary, it took him 3 to 4 hours to repair all the Sword Maidens. After all, there were dozens of Sword Maidens that needed to be repaired. His speed was considered fast at any time. However, the 3 to 4 hours made Gohan anxious. With the speed of the universe level Yuan Ko, Misaka Makoto only needed 10 minutes to reach the Miling Mountain range. In other words, Misaka Makoto should have met Loki 3 to 4 hours ago. He did not know how she was doing. Did she manage to kill Loki? Or was it really as he feared, that she was once again deceived by the cunning Loki? However, when Gohan and Gue-E finished recharging their strength and charged out of the recasting workshop like tigers released from their cages, Gohan temporarily threw these questions to the back of his mind. He needed to be fully focused during a battle. Gohan was currently carrying the lives of more than 40 people on his shoulders. Gohan did not want the tragedy of being ambushed by the Dark Shadow Wolves to happen again. Of course, Gohan still had some restrictions and reservations during the battle. For example, he could not use the Doyu sword. Also, he could not use any of the skills in the 9 swords of Mysterious Heaven other than the Sword of the Abyss. It was best not to use them either. There might be people who were fans of the military governor. Speaking of the military governor, Gohan had not logged into the game for a whole month. He did not know what was going on in the game, whether the King of You was doing well in the game, and whether the players there had forgotten about him. Although these 2 restrictions caused Gohan to be unable to unleash his full strength, he could only unleash about 50% of it. However, even with only 50% of it, Gohan's elegance during the battle was enough to stun all the Sword Maidens. In fact, they had already witnessed Gohan's battle when they went to the recasting workshop. However, At that time, the Yuan Ko were not concentrated enough. Most of the time, they charged at him one by one. Gohan's fighting style was characterized by speed, accuracy, and ruthlessness. He was like a seasoned assassin who was ruthless and could kill with a single strike. This was also the impression that most of the sword-bearers had of Gohan. However, it was different this time. This was because they were going to charge out of the Yueyang Fort's main gate, which would inevitably alarm Yuan Ko's main forces. This battle was no longer a one-on-one fight, but a 1-on-2, 1-on-5, or even 1-on-10, or even 1-on-100. On one side was the numerous and fearless magical beast Yuan Ko, while on the other side were the few human swordsmen who were proficient in battle formations. In large-scale battles between humans and Yuan Ko, it was necessary to introduce battle formations. This was because only a battle formation could protect the vulnerable sword maidens and allow them to unleash their full strength. In large-scale battles, the number of humans in Yuan Ko would usually be more than 50. In a battle of this scale, it would be impossible for the sword maidens to hide in a hidden place and command the sword ladies like guerrilla warfare. With a large number of Yuan Ko, they could easily find the hidden sword maidens and kill them when the sword ladies were not around them. Without the sword maidens, the sword ladies would naturally be finished. Therefore, in large-scale battles, protecting the sword maidens was something that every commander had to consider. As such, having the sword ladies form a battle formation and protect the sword maidens in the middle of the formation was the best way to move around and fight with the sword ladies. This was how the battle formation technique came about. After 1,000 years, it became an essential technique for humans to use in large-scale battles. Every battle formation needed a commander. They would make changes to the battle formation according to the situation of the battle. This would allow the sword ladies to effectively unleash the power of the sword ladies and ensure that the battle formation would not be broken by Yuan Ko. Once the battle formation was broken, the core sword maidens would become lambs waiting to be slaughtered. Right now, the commander of the battle formation was Guei. This was because out of everyone present, Guei was the only one who had actual experience in commanding a battle formation. Although Gohan had commanded more than 10,000 people in the famous challenge battle, that was in the game after all. It could not be compared to real life. Although Gohan did not think that his ability to command a battle formation was weaker than Guei, in actual battle, Gohan was definitely not as good as Guei. Therefore, Gohan decided to become an apprentice first and secretly observe and learn Guei's commanding skills. Under Guei's command, this small group of 40 or so sword-bearers set up a simple arrow formation. The arrow formation was one of the simplest and most commonly used assault formations. It arranged the sword maidens into the shape of an arrow. The sword maidens of the sword maidens who were good at attacking would form the two sides of the formation, forming a sharp blade that would pierce through the enemy's defenses. The sword maidens of the sword maidens who were good at defending would protect the back of the sword maidens, blocking attacks from the back. The sword maidens would be in the center of the sword maidens' protection. After all, not every sword maiden was like Gohan, able to charge in a battle on their own. The arrow formation's attack power and movement speed were very strong. Just like the arrow in its name, it could carve a bloody path through the densely packed enemy troops. It was the best formation to break through the enemy's formation. However, the arrow formation had a flaw that could not be considered a flaw, nor a flaw within a flaw. It was the sharpest point of the arrow formation, which was the point at the very center of the formation, which was equivalent to the tip of the arrow. Its attack power had to be strong enough. Figuratively speaking, it had to be sharp enough to quickly kill the enemy in front of it. It had to be able to tear open a certain point in the enemy's formation, and then the formation could use this point to open a path forward. It was like a sword. If the tip of the sword was blunt and not sharp enough, then no matter how much strength you used, it would be very difficult to pierce the enemy's body. On the contrary, if the tip of the sword was sharp enough, then you only needed a little bit of strength to pierce the enemy's heart. So the position of the arrow formation's tip was very important. In the beginning, Gu-Wei had planned to let his famed sword-tier sword maidens take this position. After all, he was the only famed sword-tier sword maidens here, and in theory, the strongest. However, Gu-Han stopped Gu-Wei and volunteered himself to take up the position of sharpness of the arrow. In Gu-Han's words, as the commander of a formation, Gu-Wei had to be in the middle of the formation. Only then would he be able to see and listen in all directions and command the formation's changes. He should be fully focused on commanding the formation and not be distracted by fighting. Gu-Han's words made Gu-Wei speechless because that was the truth. In battles, the commander was always at the center of the formation. They had to focus all their attention on observing the situation between the enemy and themselves and did not have any spare thoughts to fight or anything. So the position of commander was usually not assigned according to the strength of the battle, but according to the ability to command. Many famous generals in history, they might only be ancient sword-tier sword maidens, but they could command tens of thousands of famed sword-tier sword maidens, spirit sword-tier sword maidens, and even immortal sword-tier sword maidens to fight. If not for the fact that Gu-Wei was the only one with experience commanding a formation, then Gu-Wei's best position would not be the commander, but the position next to Gu-Han. Together with Gu-Han's sword maidens, they would tear apart the enemy's line of defense. Before the battle began, Gu-Wei had been a little worried. Would Gu-Han be able to take on the position of sharp arrow, and would he be able to tear apart the Yuan Ko in front of him? But when the battle began, Gu-Wei realized that his worries were completely unnecessary. Or rather, he should not be worried about whether Gu-Han could tear apart Yuan Ko, but whether the others could keep up with Gu-Han's speed. Gu-Han's battle was too dazzling. He was like the sun, fighting at the very front. The heavenly sword in his hand swung wildly, and no matter what Yuan Ko met him, it would quickly turn into nothingness. The speed at which he killed enemies was even faster than the dozen or so sword maidens acting as sharp arrow. No wonder Gu-Wei was worried that the other sword maidens would not be able to keep up with Gu-Han's speed. He could only smile bitterly and send a message to Gu-Han, telling him to slow down. Otherwise, the entire formation would fall apart. I didn't expect this Gu-Han to be a sword master. I didn't even notice this before. Gu-Wei could not help but sigh when he saw the only man in the row of sword maidens moving around. Actually, Gu-Han had already personally joined the battle when they went to the recasting workshop, but Gu-Wei did not notice this. It was only now that he realized that Gu-Han was actually a sword master. This kind of swordsmanship, I'm afraid even the Chaos Sword Spirit is no better than this. If only I could become a sword master too. A few sword maidens who were protected by sword maidens said in disappointment. Seeing Gu-Han's heroic appearance while wielding a long sword, these sword maidens were extremely enthralled. They all wished that they could be like Gu-Han, wielding their sword maidens and roaming the battlefield, instead of being protected by their sword maidens in the core of the formation and only being able to watch their sword maidens fight. Unfortunately, swordsmanship required talent, and most sword maidens did not have this talent. Even if they practiced swordsmanship for their entire lives, they would not be able to surpass the swordsmanship that their sword maidens had accumulated for thousands of years. Some of the sword maidens who were unwilling to give up had gone to a swordmaster's training class when they were young and learned swordsmanship for a while. The most they would receive was this: "You are a genius swordsman that only appears once a week." These sword bearers who desired to become a sword master silently thought about it. After an unknown amount of time, they suddenly heard a burst of cheers. At this time, they discovered that the gates of Yuyang Fort were already right in front of them. They had already successfully broken through the layers of defenses of Yuyang Fort. They were only one step away from escaping this place. Did we just win? The sword maidens were in disbelief. The battle was completely different from what they had imagined. They had even prepared to fight Yuan Ko with their flesh after the formation was broken through. They even set the success rate of breaking out of the encirclement at 30%. They were fighting with the belief that they would fight to the death. However, to their dismay, they did not even have a few hundred words to describe the battle. Yet they had easily broken through the place that they had once regarded as a dangerous place. Naturally, everyone's attention was focused on Gahan, who was still fighting at the front. The guy was not human. He was a monster. Chapter 500. Under Guhan's charge, this team that had been put together at the last minute rushed out of Yuyang Fort unexpectedly smoothly. After leaving Yuyang Fort, the entire terrain became more spacious. Guhan's team could go wherever they wanted to go, and they didn't have to worry about running into a dead end. The remaining Yuan Ko could no longer encircle Gahan's team. It could be said that as long as they made it out of the city gate, Gahan's team would have completely escaped from the crisis of death and could safely return to Yuzhong City. Therefore, when everyone rushed out of the city gate that symbolized life and death, everyone let out a huge sigh of relief. Who would have thought that they, who had been starving and waiting for death in a shelter, could actually escape and return to Yuzhong City? Thinking of this, everyone couldn't help but look at Gu Han with gratitude. Because of him, they were able to live again. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that Gu Han was their second parent. Feeling the grateful gazes of the people around him, Gahan faintly felt a sense of enjoyment. This feeling of being revered by others was really wonderful. Everyone, let's not waste any more time here. Let's hurry back to Yuzhong City, Gahan said to the others after killing a few Yuan Kos by his side. In response, everyone agreed that Gahan's words made sense. It was better to return to Yuzhong City as soon as possible to avoid unnecessary trouble. However, when no one wanted to complicate matters, it often meant that it was time to complicate matters. When the team was less than a kilometer away from Fort Yiyang, suddenly, a towering black tower in the distance attracted everyone's attention. "What is that?" A sword wielder was the first to notice the tower and asked as he pointed at it. "I don't know. I've never seen this thing before." Guei also looked over. In his memory, there was no information about this tower. The others also tried to scan it with their personal terminals, but the results showed that this object needed to be connected to the internet. But now that the entire Yuzhong City's internet was blocked, how could they connect to the internet? Even Guhan himself was stunned when he saw this black tower. He had no idea what this black tower was used for, but he was sure that this black tower definitely didn't exist in the past. "This is the Lonely Tower." Unexpectedly, Uncle Huang said the tower's name. Thanks to Gahan's immortal-grade medical pod, Uncle Huang's legs had recovered. Otherwise, an ordinary medical pod would not have been able to heal Uncle Huang's broken legs. Unfortunately, the immortal-grade medical pod could not be used limitlessly. Ever since it had left the medical pod and entered Gahan's hands, it had been used many times, and the various potions inside were almost used up. By the time Uncle Huang had finished using them, the medical pod had already sent out an alarm. Before they could replenish their supplies, the medical pod could no longer deal with large injuries. "Uncle Huang, do you know about this thing?" Gahan turned his head and asked Uncle Huang. "I know a little." Uncle Huang nodded. In the information passed down by the heaven-shrouding family, the Lonely Tower is a magic tower used by the Temple of the West to block information. As long as this tower is here, other than the Temple of the West's specialized magic messages, most other information will be blocked. This includes the quantum signals that we humans use. They will also be blocked. "You mean to say that this is the magic tower that Yuan Ko used to block our communication with Yuzhong City?" Guhan raised his head and looked at the tower, which seemed to be made of obsidian. Yes, a few hundred years ago, when Yuzhong City was destroyed, the family head at that time followed the army to escape. On the way, he also encountered a tower like this. After it was destroyed, we restored our connection with Yanjing City. This is the tower that can block our quantum signals. There's no mistake, Uncle Huang said with certainty. Then, Gahan thought for a while, then said to the others, "Everyone, although I know that this might be dangerous, I hope that everyone can work with me to destroy this tower. If we can restore Yuzhong City's communication with the outside world, I think it will be of great help to Yuzhong City." "But isn't this very dangerous?" a swordsman said weakly. "I saw a lot of Yuan Ko stationed near the tower." "We Hey, what are you afraid of? We just broke out of Fort Yiyang. What's there to say about a small, broken tower? A muscular man said disdainfully. Comrade Gahan, you're right. Destroying this tower will be of great help to Yuzhong City. I will go with you to destroy that tower. We really should destroy this tower. That way, we won't have to return to Yuzhong City. We'll be able to regain communication with Yuzhong City, and we'll be able to find out what's going on in Yuzhong City. Guhan is right. We shouldn't just destroy this tower. We must. Gue added. That's right. Let's go together. They had just broken through Fort Yuyang effortlessly, so they were in high spirits. They all agreed with Gahan's suggestion and clamored to destroy the tower. So, the whole team changed direction and began to advance towards the tower. The ones guarding this lonely tower were not the magical beasts Yuan Ko and Fort Yuyang, but a group of warriors in dazzling armor. Gahan recognized them. They were the Einherjars of the Norse pantheon. Other than the various gods and monsters, the Norse pantheon's main fighting force was their Einherjar system. The Norse pantheon did not have a large number of Templar warriors as cannon fodder like the Greek pantheon. Therefore, they were always at a disadvantage when fighting against the Greek pantheon. Later, the Norse pantheon invented the Einherjar system. This system absorbed the souls of outstanding human warriors and erased all their memories, leaving only their fighting instincts. Then, these processed souls were stuffed into the bodies that were catalyzed by God's blood, turning into Einherjars that had no self-awareness but could fight fearlessly. This extremely cruel Einherjar system had once beaten the Templar system of the Greek pantheon to the ground. Later, because this method required a large number of humans to be slaughtered, all the sword bearers above spirit sword level in the 8 base cities were forced to join forces and break into the Norse pantheon's divine kingdom, killing more than half of the Norse pantheon's gods. Among them, the longevity Jindi directly killed the Norse pantheon's king, Odin. As a result, under the leadership of Loki, the remaining Norse pantheon had no choice but to rely on their former enemy, the Greek pantheon. It was a great irony. Because of this, Loki's hatred for the longevity Jindi in Yuzhong City was monstrous. After obtaining the divine spark of creation, the first thing he wanted to do was to destroy Yuzhong City. The ones guarding this tower were the remaining Einherjars. They were equivalent to Loki's direct subordinates. From this, one could see the importance of this tower. Otherwise, Loki would not have been willing to place his direct subordinates here. There were about 100 Einherjars guarding this tower. All of them were elites above the ghost level. There were about 30 ghost-level spirit swordsmen, 30 soul-level spirit swordsmen, and 10 soul-level spirit sorcerers. These were the ghost-level and soul-level Yuan Ko equivalent to sword-bearers. Above them, there were 20 Flood Dragon-level Yuan Ko spirit swordsmen and about 10 Dragon-level spirit sorcerers. The most terrifying one was Yuan Ko, who was sitting at the bottom of the tower with a bow on his back. If Gohan was not mistaken, he should be one of the top 12 Einherjars, the nether-level Yuan Ko spirit archer saint. Not good. We need to retreat immediately. This isn't something we can handle. Even Gue, who was the highest level person in the team, couldn't help but shiver when he saw the Yuan Jun defending this area. He immediately threw away his previous boldness and asked everyone to retreat. What kind of joke was this? Forget about the heroic spirit sacred archer. Even a random heroic mage would be difficult for Gue to deal with. Not to mention the heroic spirit sacred archer. There was still the heroic spirit sacred archer. Seeing such a terrifying Yuan Ko guarding this place, Gue didn't have the courage to fight anymore. However, Gue was also rejoicing in his heart. If these Yuan Ko weren't guarding this lonely tower, but inside Fort Yuyang, then everyone would have died inside Fort Yuyang. No, it's too late. The spirit archer saint has already discovered us. Suddenly, Gohan appeared in front of Gue and raised his heavenly sword in front of him. Then, Gohan flew back a few meters. Immediately after, an arrow fell to the ground, its feathers still trembling. This arrow was shot by the spirit archer saint. Gue let out a cry of surprise. To be able to shoot such a powerful arrow from such a chaotic distance, there was no doubt that it was the spirit archer's saint. Their position had already been exposed. Sure enough, when Gue looked at the lonely tower again, the spirit archer's saint had already stood up. The bowstring in his hand was fully drawn once again. Retreat. All of you retreat. Gahan crawled up from the ground. At this time, the Einar jars had already reacted and began to uniformly charge towards Gahan's hiding place. It's too late. We can't outrun them. One of the Einar jars sighed helplessly. You guys leave. I'll block them. Guhan gripped his heavenly sword and charged towards the charging Einar jars. Retreat. This was the last thing Gahan said. Chapter 501. Come back. Come back right now. Guei's face was covered in tears as he shouted. Guhan sacrificed his life so that we could safely return to Yuzhong City. Are you going to let him down? Do you want his death to be worthless? I think. The sword wielder gritted his teeth, his eyes filled with determination. Yuzhong City does not lack a sword wielder like me. On the other hand, it's Gahan who will be lonely on the road to hell. I want to accompany him. For a normal sword wielder, the best way to deal with this situation was to immediately switch to a sword mistress. If a treasured sword grade sword mistress's personal shield was gone, then they would use an ancient sword grade sword mistress to fight. In short, they had to quickly repair their personal shield and not let their body be exposed to direct attacks. F***, I must have gone crazy today. I've never felt so excited in my life. Gue cursed and rushed to the front of the crowd. However, switching to a sword mistress was a process that required time. The heroic spirit archer sage pulled out a white feather arrow from his quiver and knocked it on the bowstring. He held his breath and shot the white feather arrow at the charging Gahan. In the end, not only did the heroic spirit archer sage not kill Gahan, but he had also killed one of his subordinates. Even though the heroic spirit archer sage did not have his own memories and intelligence, he was still enraged. The heroic spirit archer sage's estimation was not wrong. His arrow did hit, but it did not hit Gahan's body. In the short span of a second, Guhan had actually grabbed the head of a heroic spirit swordsman that was surrounding him and used him as a shield, easily blocking the sword strike. Guhan's heroic spirit swordsman's white feather arrow flew towards Guhan's head in the short span of a second. Guhan had actually grabbed the head of a heroic spirit swordsman that was attacking him and used it as a shield in front of him, easily blocking the sword strike. Normally, a famed sword's personal shield would be weak in front of a Nether Yuan Ko, but it should be able to withstand 10 to 20 attacks. No matter how weak it was, it could not be destroyed by a Nether Yuan Ko in one hit. This was something only a Meteor Yuan Ko could do. Since he had the power to kill him, then he would kill him first. The heroic spirit archer sage decided to let Gahan know what fear was. The duration of this process was determined by the sword wielder's proficiency in controlling the sword mark. A skilled person would only need 5 seconds to finish this, but a clumsy person might not even be able to finish him in 5 minutes. But there was one thing that was undeniable. This process would take at least 2 seconds, and these 2 seconds were enough for the heroic spirit swordsman to slash him a dozen times. Guhan realized that he seemed to have overestimated his strength. If he did not use the yin-yang sword technique, Gahan might really be surrounded and killed here. This heroic spirit archer saint seemed to see Guhan staring at him, as if he wanted to get rid of him first. If this heroic spirit archer saint had his own intelligence and memories, then he would definitely be disdainful of Guhan. A mere treasure sword tier sword wielder wanted to play the game of capturing the leader first to capture the followers. But the problem was that this was a heroic spirit archer sage. Their intelligence had been taken away by the Norse gods, and all that was left was their fighting instincts. Are they gone? Seeing the sword bearers retreat with tears in their eyes, Gahan quietly held his heavenly sword. Facing more than 100 Yuan Ko sword bearers ranging from ghost to nether sword bearers, who were more than 10 times stronger than Gahan, Gahan did not show the slightest bit of fear. Although Guhan was a treasure sword level swordsman, his personal shield was definitely not at the level of a treasure sword level swordsman. Guhan's personal shield was at the level of an advanced famed sword level personal shield. Guhan is using his own life to exchange for ours. He is a great person. He has already cast aside his gentlemanly nature and only hopes that we can survive. Guei said with a choked voice. This 8-meter-tall man was actually crying. Comrade Guei, we just left Comrade Guhan there like this. Is it really okay for him to run away? Amidst the frenzied crowd of sword wielders, a sword wielder asked Guei with a face full of shame. How terrifying was a single arrow from a nether sword bearer? The unfortunate phantom spirit swordsman was the best proof. It was just an arrow, but when it penetrated the sword bearer's body, it was like a meat grinder, grinding the phantom spirit swordsman's chest into a pile of meat from the inside. The phantom spirit swordsman was sucked into the dimensional vortex on the spot. The sword bearers should have gone far by now. I can finally take out my Doyu sword now. Guhan decided to stop hiding the existence of the Doyu sword. He was about to draw the Doyu sword out of its scabbard. After saying that, the sword bearer turned around and left without looking back. This person's actions were like a fuse that ignited the blood of all the sword bearers. They looked at each other for a moment before they chased after the sword bearer, heading in the direction they escaped from. From the corner of his eye, Guhan seemed to see a flash of gold in the air. Most people would think that they were seeing things or it was a refraction of light, but when Guhan saw the gold, his hair stood on end. He no longer cared about the two sword bearers attacking him from behind. He used his personal shield to withstand the attacks from the two sword bearers and try to fall to the ground. It should be known that the sword elements in Guhan's body had reached 14,000 quarks. Although the heavenly sword was an ancient sword maiden, its 3 measurements had already reached the standard of a famed sword. More importantly, under the effect of the yin-yang sword technique, the 3 measurements of the heavenly sword and the 3 measurements of the Doyu sword were Guhan's actual 3 measurements. This was equivalent to doubling the energy of the heavenly sword's personal shield. Right now, Guhan's personal shield was completely at the level of a famed sword. My personal shield shattered with just 1 arrow. Even Guhan could not help but be dumbfounded when he saw this. When the sword bearer heard Guei's words, he hesitated for a moment. A myriad of expressions appeared on his face. At the same time, the other sword bearers also stopped when they saw this scene. They silently looked at the two of them. 1 or 2 Guhan had no problem dealing with them, but when they gathered together and surrounded Guhan, Guhan felt a certain amount of pressure. Although Guhan could kill a heroic spirit great sword master every 10 or so seconds, these great sword masters were not afraid of death. When one died, there would be 2 more to fill the gap. In addition, the heroic spirit magister would occasionally throw a fireball at Guhan. This made it difficult for Guhan to move an inch. But this was the Archer Saint's ultimate move. Unless it was absolutely necessary, the Archer Saint would only use this last move. The battle had just begun, and he had only shot 2 arrows. If he used it now, it would be completely against the rules. Have you ever seen an Ultraman use Ultraman Beam to attack a monster? 3 seconds ago, Guhan was currently surrounded by 5 or 6 heroic spirit greatsword masters. These heroic spirit greatsword masters were extremely outstanding swordsmen when they were alive. After their souls were stripped of their memories and only their battle instincts were left, their swordsmanship had improved by quite a bit. It was almost comparable to the swordsmanship of most sword ladies. Without the suppression of intelligence, the heroic spirit's battle instincts were infinitely magnified. This heroic spirit archer could clearly feel that this human swordsman had the power to kill him. Comrade Guei, I don't think we can escape. The swordsman who was frantically escaping suddenly stopped. Comrade Guei, Guhan is the youngest among us. I can't let a kid younger than me die shamelessly. I have to go back and help him. The swordsman roared, turned around, and walked back. The heroic spirit archer took out another arrow from his quiver, but it was different from the previous white arrow. This arrow was golden, and it was almost 3 times smaller than the previous white arrow. It was like a pocket-sized arrow. Although Gahan had expected to encounter the Archer Saint's golden snitch, he didn't expect the Archer Saint to act so unconventionally. He used his ultimate move as soon as they met. This was a huge miscalculation on Gahan's part, and it was also the first time Yuan Ko showed off his intelligence. Although Gahan was already at his limit, it was a pity that it was too late. The moment Gahan pounced, the golden arrow had already hit Gahan's personal shield. After a violent tremor, the personal shield actually exploded. The remaining power of the golden arrow successfully tore a 10-centimeter deep wound on Gahan's arm before it finally stopped. The swordsman needed to hide the sword mark of a treasure sword, and then reveal the sword mark of an ancient sword. When Gahan fell to the ground, 4 or 5 swordsmen rushed up and slashed at Gahan's body. If these swords landed, Gahan's body would basically be crippled. Could it be that this is the Archer Saint's ultimate move, Golden Snitch? Gahan remembered this name. According to the information, the Archer Saint could use a type of golden arrow. This small arrow had such a magical characteristic. Any defense that didn't exceed 2 times his absolute attack power would be ignored by his golden arrow. It could directly destroy the opponent's defense and pierce through the opponent's body. After taking out this golden arrow, the heroic spirit archer didn't rush to attack. Instead, he placed the arrow on the bowstring and focused on Gahan, who was constantly approaching him. The Archer Saint's eyes looked at a somewhat illusory position. After a long wait, when Gahan's figure flashed past that position, the heroic spirit archer's body emitted a red light. Then, the golden arrow quietly disappeared on the bowstring, as if it had never existed. The heroic spirit archer Saint was confident that this arrow would not be able to be dodged and would definitely take it head-on. His arrow would definitely hit. For Gahan, it wasn't that he couldn't beat Yuan Ko, as long as he got rid of the Archer Saint first, but this was the reality. Under the heroic spirit archer's arrow, he turned into pieces. Chapter 502. The sacred archer looked at Gahan, who was surrounded by the heroic spirits without saying a word. In his mind, Gahan was already a dead man. There had never been a sword-tier swordsman who could survive his golden snitch. Moreover, there were so many heroic spirits surrounding him. If the opponent's shield was broken, the swordsman's body would be chopped into pieces in less than a second. Unfortunately, Gahan was the main character. Others needed at least 2 seconds to change their sword scars, but Gahan didn't even need 0.1 seconds. The moment the shield was broken, Gahan placed his hand on the hilt of the Doyu's sword, and a new shield appeared. In between, there was only a 0.1 second gap. This was also the strength of the yin-yang sword technique. The sword scars of the Doyu sword and the heavenly sword were linked together. There was no need to change the sword scars at all to freely choose between the Doyu sword and the heavenly sword. Therefore, when the sacred archer, who was a little tired from using the golden snitch, raised his head and saw the heroic spirits surrounding Gahan suddenly being overturned and torn into pieces by the sword chi that filled the sky, the sacred archer was stunned. Even if he didn't have any intelligence, he began to doubt this world. Was the sword-tier swordsman in front of him really a sword-tier swordsman? You asked for it. Dozens of Gahan's sword chi gushed out, instantly killing all the heroic spirits and heroic spirit swordsmen surrounding him. After having 14,000 quarks of sword essence, the sword chi of the abyss that required 100 quarks of sword essence was no longer a luxury for Gahan. Gahan could also release dozens of sword chi in one breath, instantly killing a large number of enemies. At a time that was unimaginable a few days ago, every sword chi of the abyss was extremely precious to Gahan, and he had to use it carefully. A mere 4,000 quarks of sword essence was not enough for Gahan to squander. Now, Gahan could finally experience the feeling of being a nouveau riche. However, Gahan didn't use dozens of sword chis just to experience the feeling of being a tycoon. The reason he did so was to quickly clear out the melee warriors blocking his way and open up a path to the archer sage. The heroic spirit archer Saint's golden snitch was indeed a very powerful skill. If it wasn't for Gahan's yin-yang sword art, then Gahan would have most likely turned into minced meat. Although the golden snitch was strong, its weakness was also very obvious. Just like now, after using the golden snitch, the heroic spirit archer Saint fell into a period of weakness because using the golden snitch required a lot of energy. According to the information of the predecessors, after using the golden snitch, the heroic spirit archer Saint should be weakened for at least 10 seconds. During this period, whether it was attack speed, movement speed, or hit rate, the heroic spirit archer Saint would be greatly weakened. It was even worse than the soul grade Yuan Ko. This gave Gahan the best chance to win. Within 10 seconds, as long as Gahan could get close to the heroic spirit archer Saint and seriously injure him within 10 seconds, the heroic spirit archer Saint would only have a dead end. Seeing Gahan get up from the ground and rush toward him, the heroic spirit archer Saint immediately reacted and understood what Gahan wanted to do. In these 10 seconds, he could not let Gahan get close to him. 0 second. Gahan shot dozens of sword auras from the ground, killing all the spirits that surrounded him. 1st second, Gahan stood up from the ground and began to charge toward the heroic spirit archer Saint. 2nd second, 10 heroic spirit sorcerers began to guide shaman witchcraft under the command of the heroic spirit archer Saint. 3rd second, Gahan was 500 meters away from the heroic spirit archer Saint. At the same time, the heroic spirit sorcerer Saint began to chant a curse. 4th second, Gahan was 400 meters away from the heroic spirit archer Saint. At this time, the heroic spirit sorcerer Saint's shaman witchcraft had been guided. 10 shaman giants were summoned in front of Gahan. These shamans did not have high attack power, but their size and health were very high. They were the best way to stop Gahan. 5th second, Gahan was 300 meters away from the heroic spirit archer Saint. Gahan used 9 blades of mysterious heaven, sword in the sky. This was a move that Gahan had used before in the hero's start from the beginning dungeon. This move could make the ground sink and create sharp spikes. It was the best way for Gahan to stop his enemies. At that time, he had trapped the 3 Egyptian gods underground for a while. As a result, the 10 shaman giants that were supposed to stop Gahan were stopped underground by Gahan. Meanwhile, Gahan stepped on the heads of the shaman giants and passed through the stone forest that he created. 6th second, Gahan was 200 meters away from the heroic spirit archer Saint. At this time, the heroic spirit sorcerer Saint was about to finish chanting. 7th second, Gahan was 100 meters away from the heroic spirit archer Saint. The heroic spirit sorcerer Saint had prepared a large-scale water spell, Deep Sea. This spell turned the ground under Gahan's feet into a lush green lake. With Gahan as the center, the dry, rocky ground within 100 meters had actually turned into a pond. Just now, when Gahan used terrain swordsmanship to deal with the shaman giants, the heroic spirit sorcerer Saint had actually thought so. What they had just used was the water spell Deep Sea. It could transform the terrain into the terrain that a mage wanted. Without the support of the ground, unless Gahan could fly, he would immediately sink into the pond. He wouldn't be able to take another step forward. In the 8th second, Gahan sank to the bottom of the lake. The heroic spirit archer Saint let out a sigh of relief. As long as he had 2 more seconds, he would be able to recover most of his spirit. He would be able to use his invincible archery to teach Gahan a lesson. The remaining heroic spirit swordsmen and swordmasters would also be able to surround Gahan. At that time, the heroic spirit archer Saint will be able to rest easy. In the 9th second, the hundreds of square meters of lake water disappeared. Gahan jumped up from the bottom of the lake and pointed his sword at the heroic spirit archer Saint's forehead. At this time, Gahan was less than 10 meters away from the heroic spirit archer Saint. In the 10th second, the heroic spirit archer Saint hurriedly raised the bow in his hand. This was an ancient divine bow made from the bones and meridians of the ancient giants. It was extremely hard. Even if the nether rank Yuan Ko wanted to destroy this bow, he would need to spend several hours attacking it. As long as the heroic spirit archer Saint could use this bow to block Gahan's sword, he would be able to hold on for 10 seconds. After recovering his speed, he would immediately be able to escape from Gahan's attack range. Fool, in close combat, your bow is useless. Gahan coldly snorted. The Doyu sword in his hand released a dazzling sword light. 9 swords of mysterious heaven, sword dipper. Gahan directly used his strongest single-target killing move. He also injected 9,000 quarks of his remaining 10,000 quarks into the Doyu sword. The sword dipper didn't have a fixed consumption of sword essence. As long as you put in more sword essence, it could cause more damage. In the blink of an eye, Gahan's Doyu sword passed through the gap between the bow and the arrow, directly stabbing into the heroic spirit archer Saint's body from the forehead. The heroic spirit archer Saint's eyeballs rolled up and turned white like a dead fish's. Then, as one of the 12 strongest heroic spirit warriors, the ultimate cannon fodder of the Norse gods, the nether rank Yuan co-heroic spirit archer Saint died under Gahan's Doyu sword. Brother Gahan, if we live together. If we die together. At this time, the sword-bearers who had returned to fight alongside Gahan also returned to the battlefield. As soon as they arrived, they saw a scene that they had never imagined. They imagined that Gahan was in a difficult battle, that Gahan was covered in wounds, and that Gahan had died under the siege of Yuan Ko. The best they could imagine was that Gahan was surrounded by a group of heroic spirits and retreated in an orderly manner. But they never imagined that Gahan would actually kill his way to the nether rank Yuan Ko, and that nether rank Yuan Ko was kneeling in front of Gahan like a slave. King. Seeing this scene, seeing the nether rank Yuan Ko kneeling in front of Gahan, and Gahan's sword pointing at the other party's body, P.S. Due to the angle, they couldn't see that Gahan's sword had pierced through Yuan Ko's forehead. They could only feel that Gahan's sword was pointing at the other party's body. Some of the sword-bearers could not help but spit out such words. In their eyes, the real Gahan was like a king, and the nether rank Yuan Ko kneeling in front of them was a stepping stone for the king to ascend to the throne. At that moment, the dimensional vortex appeared above Gahan. Only then did they realize that the nether rank Yuan Ko hadn't submitted to Gahan. Instead, he had died under Gahan's sword. Following that, Gahan quickly pulled out the Doyu sword and inserted it into the dimensional vortex. After absorbing the sword essence inside, he quickly sheathed it back in the scabbard and held the heaven-reliant sword in his hand again. The entire process was as smooth as flowing water. He did his best to prevent others from noticing that the sword in his hand was not heaven-reliant sword. Everyone, let's talk about our problems later. How about we eliminate the remaining Yuan Ko first? When Gahan saw the sword-bearers running back, he knew that they wanted to live and die with him. He couldn't help but feel touched. Unfortunately, now wasn't the time to chat. There were still dozens of Yuan Ko here, including 10 dragon rank heroic spirit mages. If they weren't careful, these sword-bearers might die under the spells of the heroic spirit mages. In the next 10 minutes, Gahan fought the 10 heroic spirit mages alone, while the remaining sword-bearers killed the remaining Einherjars under Guiyi's command. Both sides cooperated very well. Finally, the Lonely Tower was completely clear to the Yuan Ko defending it. This meant that Yuzhong City was once again in the hands of humans. Chapter 503. Gahan, it's great that you're all right. When all of the Yuan Kos were killed, Guiyi brought the swordsman to Gahan's side and met up with him. Boss Gahan, you're so awesome. How did you do it? Yeah, Boss Gahan, my heart almost jumped out of my chest when I saw you kill that nether rank Yuan Ko. How did you do it? Boss, there's no need to say anything else. From now on, you're my boss. Please tell us the method you used to deal with Yuan Yen. These sword-bearers were all talking at once. The core of their conversation was to figure out how Gahan had killed this archer saint. But unknowingly, the way they addressed Gahan had changed many times from Mr. Gahan to Comrade Gahan, then to Brother Gahan, and finally to Boss Gahan. Gahan was the youngest among them, but almost everyone called him Boss so naturally. From this, it could be seen that Gohan's position in the team was completely different. Even to Gue, very few members would call him boss. Actually, the reason why Gohan was able to kill that nether rank Yuan Ko so easily was mostly because the Holy Archer was courting death. Normally, the Holy Archer would constantly use ordinary white feather arrows to surround and kill Gohan, as well as the various skills of the Magisters and Wizards to exhaust Gohan. If that was the case, if Gohan wanted to win, he would have to summon 1 or 2 nether rank Yuan Kos from the Trial Circle to help him. However, this Holy Archer felt good about himself and directly used his ultimate move, causing himself to enter a weakened state. This gave Gohan the opportunity to kill him in a short 10 seconds. This was something that the Holy Archer didn't expect even at the moment of his death. From this point of view, it was not unreasonable for Ultraman to save their ultimate move for the last big boss in anime, television, or novels. The one who used their ultimate move first would die first. Who knew who made this rule? Of course, Gohan couldn't tell these curious swordsmen about the real battle. This was because Gohan couldn't explain how he managed to change sword marks in a second, nor could he explain why he had 2 sword maidens, Doyu and Heaven Reliance. Fortunately, Gohan already knew that the swordsman would ask him this question, and had already prepared a perfect explanation. We're all smart people. I'm just a treasured sword wielder. How could I defeat a nether rank Yuan Ko? Gohan smiled bitterly. His acting was perfect. To tell you the truth, I came back from the trial circle left behind by Jitian Jindi. I obtained a few sword chi crystals left behind by His Majesty Jitian in the trial circle. Just now, I used His Majesty Jitian's sword chi to injure these Yuan Kos, and then took the opportunity to kill that nether rank Yuan Ko. High-grade dimensional crystals had another use, and that was to store the sword chi left behind by one's master. Many high-level swordsmen would store the sword chi of their full-strength attack in dimensional crystals. As long as they used a special method, they could activate the sword chi and use it to kill enemies they couldn't handle. When everyone heard Gohan's explanation, they were instantly convinced. Although this explanation sounded a little far-fetched, compared to the fact that Gohan had killed a nether rank Yuan Ko with his own strength as a treasured sword wielder, this explanation instantly became very reasonable. After all, no one would be willing to believe that a treasured sword wielder could defeat a nether rank Yuan Ko with their own strength. This was too much of a blow to their self-esteem. However, if someone who was really familiar with the sword chi crystals was here, they would find that Gohan was simply spouting nonsense, because once the sword chi stored in the sword chi crystals was activated, it couldn't be controlled. The sword chi would attack wherever it wanted, and apart from the person who triggered it, everything else would be its target. This sword chi would twist the entire battlefield into a mess, and traces of sword chi attacks could be seen everywhere. However, on the battlefield now, apart from a few traces of sword chi, there were no other traces, especially the place where the Holy Archer had died. According to what Gohan had said, since that was where the sword chi had attacked the Holy Archer, it should naturally be the place with the most traces of sword chi. However, in reality, it was very clean, as if nothing had happened. Those who knew the ropes could tell at a glance that Gohan was lying. Unfortunately, there was no one there who knew the ropes, because the sword chi crystals were treasures of every family. They would only be used when the family was on the brink of death, or when the family's bloodline was in danger. Normally, they wouldn't even see a sword chi crystal, let alone use it. This was because making the sword chi crystals required high-quality dimensional crystals. They had to be at least a Marquis grade dimensional crystal. Using such a precious dimensional crystal to store sword chi was too extravagant. Even Jindy wouldn't waste dimensional crystals to make too many. He would only leave some for his descendants to use for self-defense. So, this kind of thing was very rare. Most people wouldn't even see it, so they didn't know much about it. Just like that, the problem of Gohan's power was erased by Gohan's concealment of the sword chi crystals. However, everyone still called Gohan their boss. Even if Gohan didn't use his own power to defeat underworld-class Yuan Ko, it didn't matter. He He had risked his life to face underworld-class Yuan Ko alone. That was why everyone was grateful to Gohan. 1, 2, 3, attack. Gohan gave the command, and all the Sword Maidens used their strongest attacks on the Lonely Tower. The body of the Lonely Tower trembled and cracks started to move upwards from the bottom. In the end, the entire Lonely Tower was completely shattered and turned into a pile of rubble. How is it? Can we get back in touch with Yuzhong City? The moment the Lonely Tower fell, Gohan projected his personal terminal into the air. He chose to reset the network connection. So, under the watchful eyes of all the Sword Maidens, Gohan's terminal reconnected to the network. The ripple-like pattern continued to spread outwards. This meant that the signal was being sent out from the terminal, and it was looking for a usable base station. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes passed, and the signal was still searching. There was no base station. How could this be? Isn't this the tower that blocked our communication? One of the Sword Maidens said disappointedly. No, it could be that there's another Lonely Tower somewhere else. We only destroyed one, so it's useless. Another Sword Maiden guessed. Just as Gohan was beginning to lose hope of getting back in touch with Yuzhong City, the ripples suddenly began to vibrate. Then, a green dot appeared on the screen. This meant that the terminal had finally found a usable base station. Quick, contact Yuzhong City. Quick. Seeing this, everyone was so excited that they almost cried. Finally, after so long, they could finally get back in touch with Yuzhong City. They could finally talk to their loved ones. Hello. Is this Yuzhong City? Hello. Is this Yuzhong City's communication center? Please respond if you hear me. Please respond if you hear me. Gohan dialed the number of Yuzhong City's communication center, but there was no response. Mom, it's me. Can you hear me? One of the Sword Maidens dialed his family's number, but there was also no response. Seeing this situation, the other sword bearers all dialed the number of their relatives, wanting to restore contact with them in Yuzhong City. However, without exception, all the calls were answered with a blank tone. Something strange happened. Although the terminal had connected to the base station, they did not seem to be able to get back in touch with Yuzhong City. But this did not make sense. The base station was installed in Yuzhong City. As long as the base station was connected, it would definitely be able to get back in touch with the entire city. How could they not be able to dial a single number? This was too illogical. Oh no, could it be that Yuzhong City has already? One of the Sword Maidens suddenly thought of something and fell to the ground in horror. If the base station in Yuzhong City could not work, then it was very likely that the entire city had fallen. Just like Yiyang Fortress, Yuzhong City had been breached by the surging Yuan Ko, and the entire city had been destroyed. Shut up. We haven't figured out the situation yet, so stop spouting nonsense. Seeing that everyone's morale had been disturbed by the Sword Maiden's words, Gue-E hurriedly scolded the Sword Maidens. Then what should we do now? Everyone looked at Gohan and Gue-E. In this situation, only the two main pillars of the team could make the decision. Sigh, I'll try again. Gue-E projected his personal terminal and quickly dialed a number. There was no response. Gue-E dialed another number. There was still no response. When Gue-E dialed the third number without any hope, unexpectedly, a beeping sound came from the other end of the communication device. Everyone heard this sound for a moment. Finally, it was no longer a dead tone. Finally, they could hear the beeping sound. This meant that the call had been made. Now, it was up to the owner of the personal terminal on the other end of the communication device to pick up the call. Motherf asterisk her. Who dares to call me at this time? If there's nothing urgent, when I return to Yuzhong City, I'll lock you up in the disciplinary commission for discipline inspection. On the other end of the communication device was the hot-tempered voice of a man. The voice on the other end of the communication device was unclear because there were many other sounds mixed in. There were explosions, flames, wind, roars, and screams. It sounded like the other end was on a battlefield. Chapter 504. Gue became excited when he heard the noise in the background. Obviously, he recognized the owner of the voice. Master, it's me, Master. I didn't think I'd be able to speak to Master. This is great. Gue said excitedly. Wait, you are. The voice on the other end of the call suddenly stopped. All that could be heard were the sounds of battle in the background. After about 10 seconds, the voice spoke again. Just like Gue, his voice was also very excited. Gue, you're Gue. You brat, you're actually still alive. It's my master. Thanks to master and brother Guhan's blessings, I, Gue, am able to come out of Fort Yuyang alive. I, Gue, am able to come out alive. Gue, this one, 8M tall man, was on the verge of tears as he spoke. Ha ha ha, good brat, I told you wouldn't die. You won't die. The person on the other end of the call laughed wildly. This person was the pleated sword spirit, a spiritual sword-rank swordsman who was in charge of defending Fort Yuyang. Not sure if everyone noticed, but the way Gue addressed the pleated sword spirit was a little special. He addressed the pleated sword spirit as master. This meant that Gue had already joined the pleated sword spirit's private force. That was why he addressed the pleated sword spirit as master and servant. This was a form of address that only existed in a private army. This meant that Gue had already joined the pleated sword spirit's private army and became a member. For a swordsman who aspired to become an emperor and become Jindi, a private army was something that had to be formed. This was because the synchronization between emperor swords and sword ladies was not as simple and clear as ancient swords, treasured swords, and famed swords. Sword wielders who were determined to become Jindi would have to go through a series of complicated processes and battles before they could ascend to the throne. Although every Jindi's ascension process was different, one thing was the same. The sword bearer who attempted to become emperor had to have his own private army to have a chance of success. In history, there were only 4 Jindis who succeeded in ascending the throne without forming a private army. However, their situations were special and couldn't be mentioned in the same breath. All in all, after the 5 Jindis, every Jindis had their own private army before ascending the throne, and a private army played an extremely important role in their ascension process. For Gahan, who aspired to become Jindi, it was only a matter of time before he formed his own private army. However, the Sword Committee had a strict rule that sword bearers who had not reached spirit sword level were not allowed to form their own private army. Even if they did, there was an absolute limit to the number of people who could form their own army. The Sword Committee would not allow a famed swordsman to form his own army. In a sense, private armies were a malignant tumor. This was because of Jindi's relationship with them that they had no choice but to exist. Humans couldn't cut off all private armies, so they could only make them as small as possible. Gue, you said that you escaped from Fort Yuyang? Is that true? Because Gue had always been in hands-free mode. Everyone could hear the conversation between Gue and the pleated sword spirit. I remember now. When the updraft communicated with us, you were also in the image. You were one of the survivors that was saved by the updraft, right? When the pleated sword spirit was speaking, there were a few violent explosions coming from time to time. Yes, Master. I was saved by the updraft. I just escaped from Fort Yuyang today, Gue replied. That's great. That's great. Good boy. If it wasn't for Master Wu Dao stopping me, I would have returned to Fort Yuyang to save you. By the way, how are the survivors with you? Did they all escape safely? Don't worry, Master. The other sword bearers have all escaped. We are very safe now and are preparing to return to Yuzhong City to rejoin Master's team. Hearing that Gue was returning to Yuzhong City, the pleated sword spirit suddenly fell silent for a while, then asked, How did you get in touch with me? All communications have been blocked, and I can't even receive communications from Yuzhong City. My lord, we just destroyed a lonely tower and removed the shield in this area. Only then did we restore communication. But my lord, it's fine if we can't contact Yuzhong City. But why can't you contact Yuzhong City either? Are you not in Yuzhong City now? It's a long story. I'll tell you when I see you. The pleated sword spirit sighed deeply. That's right. Since you were able to break out of Fort Yuyang's encirclement, The defenses of Fort Yuyang should be very weak right now, right? Otherwise, it would be impossible for a few dozen sword-bearers to escape from Fort Yuyang. This, Gui did not know how to answer. If he said that the defenses were weak, he would be lying. Although the defenses of Fort Yuyang had dropped a lot, it wasn't to the point where they couldn't stop Gui Yi's escape. If it wasn't for Gu Han's incredible battle prowess, they might still be fighting bitterly in Fort Yuyang. But if the defenses were still strong, there was no way they could explain how they managed to escape. More importantly, the pleated sword spirit's words were filled with hope that the defenses of Fort Yuyang would be weak. This meant that Yuzhong City needed the defenses of Fort Yuyang to be weak. That's right. The defenses of Fort Yuyang are weak now, Gui said through gritted teeth. Good, good, good. The heavens have not forsaken Yuzhong City. The pleated sword spirit laughed, then quickly said, Don't hang up. I'll transfer your call to Master Lu Lei right now. You have to tell Master Lu Lei everything about your situation. Understand? Sword Immortal Cloudy Sky. Gui was shocked. He didn't think that he would have a chance to communicate with Sword Immortal Yun Xiao. This was the first time in Gui Yi's life that he was communicating with an immortal sword wielder. Even though he had interacted with a few Universe Great Soul puppets, this was definitely the first time he was communicating with a human immortal sword wielder. After a few beeps, Gahan heard a very familiar voice. However, compared to before, this voice was filled with fatigue. It was as if Lu Lei had aged 10 years in an instant. You're Gui, right? I'm the chairman of Yuzhong City's Sword Committee, the head of the Sword Pavilion, Lu Lei. I only have one question for you. You must answer me honestly. Do not hide anything from me. Is the defenses of Fort Yuyang really weak? Lu Lei's question was very calm, but it caused Gui Yi's entire body to break out in cold sweat. Hearing Lu Lei ask such a serious question, Gui didn't know how to answer. He didn't know how to answer this question. Was Yuyang Fort's defenses really weak? Perhaps only Gahan could answer this question. I'm weak. Gui struggled for a long time before saying the word weak. However, when he put it together, it did sound a little strange. All right, if I order you to counterattack the Yuyang Fort and clear out all of the Yuaning in the Yuyang Fort in preparation for the arrival of the main army, can you do it? Never in their wildest dreams would they have imagined that Lu Lei would actually make such a request. He actually wanted them to return to Fort Yuyang, and even wanted to wipe out all the remaining Yuan Kuan. To Gui, this was a ridiculous request. They'd spent so much effort to escape. Could it be that they had to kill their way back now? Gui, who was usually fluent in speech, began to stutter. He could not give Lu Lei an answer after a long time. Let me ask you, can you take down Fort Yuyang? Lu Lei used an even more oppressive aura to interrogate Gui. When Gui heard that, his body went limp and he almost fell to the ground. Fortunately, Guhan appeared behind him in time and supported Gui Yi's waist, preventing him from falling to the ground. Give it to me. Guhan patted Gui Yi's shoulder and tapped his own terminal against Gui Yi's. He said gently, Give it to me. Let me talk to my master. Oh, okay. Gui didn't say anything. It was as if he had thrown away something he had seen a ghost. He tapped his personal terminal on Guhan's personal terminal and transferred the call to Guhan's personal terminal. Who are you? Why do you have to talk to me? Gui Yi's action of transferring his terminal could not be hidden from Lu Lei because there was a system notification. Master, it's me, Guhan. Guhan also turned on hands-free, allowing everyone to hear his conversation with Lu Lei. Good disciple, why are you there? On the other side of the call, Lu Lei was shocked. He never thought that his disciple would appear here at this time. Master, I'll answer that question when I have time. Right now, I just want to tell you one thing. Guhan paused for a moment, then said with incomparable determination, Master, this disciple promises you that this disciple will definitely take down the Yuyang stronghold. Lu Lei was silent for a long time. Good disciple, were you the one who saved Gui and the others? It was me. Guhan smiled. It was just a coincidence. It was mainly because of Gui and the others. If you don't save yourself, The heavens won't save you. Good. I believe in you. Lulei said happily. I believe in you. Since you are the person chosen by His Majesty's Shroud Heaven, you will definitely be able to help Yuzhong's city overcome this crisis. You have 30 minutes to take back Fort Yuyang with your brothers. Then, hold the fort until our army arrives. Do you understand? Yes, I understand. Guhan's words were like a mountain range, so firm that the people who heard it immediately put down the doubts in their hearts. Master, if I may be so bold as to ask, what exactly happened? Why do you look so tired? I'm worried about your health. Guhan asked with concern. He could tell that Yuzhong's city was in big trouble. Nothing. Although Lu Lei said that it was nothing, he didn't say a word and hung up the communication directly. Brother Guhan, what's going on? After ending the call, Gue-Yi asked Guhan in a very brainless manner. It's nothing good. The whole of Yuzhong city is going to change. Guhan turned and walked in the direction of Fort Yuyang. Let us complete our mission for Yuzhong city. Chapter 505. Even though he was returning to Fort Yuyang and reclaiming the humans' fort, it wasn't hard to imagine how difficult it would be with just 40 people. Let alone 40 people, any normal person would wish they had 400 people under their command. However, when he turned around, he didn't call for anyone to follow him. He just silently walked back by himself. He knew that some people didn't want to go back. He didn't want to say it out loud and be a bad person. In reality, after Gahan started walking, the rest of the sword-bearers automatically followed behind Gahan without saying a word. As the saying goes, a warrior doesn't speak, only blood and sword. The Yuan Ko didn't expect Gahan and the others to return. There weren't even a few Yuan Ko at the gate. Gahan and his men easily re-entered Fort Yuyang. Brother Gay, please take 30 brothers and guard this place. Don't let a single Yuan Ko escape. After killing a few Yuan Ko near the gate, Gahan said to Gue-Yi, No, how can I do that? If I bring 30 people to guard this place, wouldn't that mean you only have 10 people? Gue-Yi waved his hand. When I start the cleanup operation, there will be a large number of Yuan Ko trying to escape. If Brother Gue-Yi doesn't have enough people, then we won't be able to guard the gate. If we kill all the Yuan Ko in Fort Yuyang, we might even be in danger. Therefore, 30 brothers is necessary. Brother Gue-Yi, please don't say any more. But there are only 10 people. How can you possibly kill all the Yuan Ko in the fort? Gue-Yi continued to try to dissuade him. Big Brother Gue-Yi, don't worry. Even a nether rank Yuan Ko can't do anything to me. Furthermore, there are no longer any nether rank Yuan Ko in Fort Yuyang. At most, there are only a few dragon rank Yuan Ko left. They're not even worthy opponents. With that, Gahan picked 10 people and once again charged into Fort Yuyang. Very quickly, they disappeared, leaving behind a dumbfounded Gue-Yi guarding the gate. F*CK. What the hell is this? Gue-Yi cursed and called out the names of 20 people, leaving only 10 to guard the city gates. He planned to send Guhan himself to help him. But before Gue-Yi could make a move, he suddenly heard a crazed howl. Then, from the depths of Fort Yuyang, 5 desert wolves charged out. These desert wolves were all at the Soul Realm. Yuan Ko had to put in some effort to deal with them. So before Gue-Yi could make a move, he was pinned down by these desert wolves. Brothers, once we kill these desert wolves, we'll go help Brother Gahan. Gue-Yi yelled. He had no intention of giving up on helping Gahan. Unfortunately, he soon discovered that he was completely tied to this place. Wave after wave of Yuan Huans rushed out of Yuyang Fort. These Yuan Huans, who were usually arrogant and would viciously pounce on humans whenever they saw them, would tear them into pieces and swallow them into their stomachs. These Yuan Huans, who had scared the humans to the point that they looked like quails that had lost their heads out of fear, had now turned into quails, crazily rushing towards the city gate without any regard for their lives. The number of Yuan Kos gave Gue-Yi a big fright. F*CK. I finally know why Gahan gave me 30 people to guard this place. Even 60 people wouldn't be enough. This place is the most important battlefield. F*CK. I'm not doing this anymore. I'll let these Yuan Ko's escape. Gue scolded angrily. Although he said that he was going to let these Yuanjin leave, in reality, he was commanding more than 30 sword maidens to form a human wall and block these soulless Yuanjin who were running for their lives at the city gate. Gradually, more than 200 magical beast Yuan silhouettes had accumulated at the city gate. They were all blocking the city gate, trying to rush into the world outside the city gate. 30 against 200. It sounded like these Yuan Ko's were enough to kill Gue and the others many times over. But in reality, neither side was willing to give way to the other at the gates. Fort Yuyang was originally designed to be a defensive fortress, so the size of the gate was very small. At most, it was only big enough for a car to pass through. If the sword ladies stood side by side, it would take about 8 of them to block the entire gate. It was also because of the narrow position of the city gate that it looked like there were many Yuan Jis blocking the city gate. But Gue Yi's sword ladies actually had to face no more than 5 Yuan Jis at the same time. With 8 sword ladies blocking, if a sword lady's personal shield ran out of energy, Gue Yi would immediately command the other sword ladies to take over the position of that sword lady. With 30 sword ladies to take Gue Yi's place, the battle was surprisingly easy. Some of the sword ladies even whistled happily at the end. It was a completely different feeling from before, as if they were facing a great enemy. Brother Gue Yi, how's the situation on your side? Suddenly, Gue Yi's communicator was connected, and Guhan's voice came from the other end. Ha ha! Brother Gahan, don't worry, I'm doing very well here. All the Yuan Ko's have been blocked. You just need to focus on clearing out the remaining ones. As long as I have enough time, these 200 Yuan Ko's will all be taken care of for you. Gue Yi said proudly. Brother Gue Yi is very brave, but unfortunately, we don't have much time left. Gahan said in a low voice. Not much time left? What do you mean? Gue Yi was stunned. He just remembered that Lu Lei had given them 30 minutes to clear out all the Yuan Ko's in Fort Yuyang. Looking at the time, they only had 5 minutes left. Brother Gue Yi, you guys can rest for a while. Leave the rest to me. Leave it to you? What do you mean by that? Gue Yi didn't get an answer to his question, so Gahan hung up. But soon, Gue Yi knew that he didn't need to answer. This was because Gahan had already appeared behind Yuan Ko's back, holding the heavenly sword in his hand. Like a bolt of lightning, he charged into the group of Yuan Ko's. Once upon a time, Gue Yi had heard of a saying, wolves enter a flock of sheep. In Gue Yi's heart, Yuan Ko's were the wolves, and humans were the lamentable flock of sheep. Even now, Gue Yi hadn't changed his opinion. But he saw another saying, sheep enter a flock of wolves. The thing Gahan looked like a weak little sheep, but he charged straight into the pack of Yuan Ko's that was like a pack of wolves and tigers. When these Yuan Ko's saw Gahan's appearance, the entire pack became restless. They began to attack Gue Yi's defensive line even more frantically. Gahan alone suppressed more than 200 Yuan Ko's. When these Yuan Ko's saw Gahan, they didn't even have the courage to continue fighting. All they wanted to do was run. This was because Gahan's side was too terrifying. Every time Gahan swung his sword, several Yuan Ko's would fall to the ground and be absorbed by different dimensional vortexes. This group of Yuan Ko's decreased at a speed visible to the naked eye. When the last 5 Yuan Ko's screamed and fell in front of Gue Yi's group, they didn't know how to look at Gahan anymore. When Gahan first met them, they only felt that Gahan was lucky to be able to synchronize with Lady Yi. Apart from that, he didn't have any strong points. Later, when Gahan led them out of Fort Yuyang, they felt that Gahan was a sharp arrow that could tear through the defenses of powerful enemies. His strength was indeed above theirs, but Gahan's strength didn't exceed their common sense. Then, Gahan destroyed the nether-rank Yuan Ko's heroic spirit archer. Even though there was the so-called sword energy crystal, it couldn't hide the fact that Gahan could monopolize over 100 Yuan Ko's. Not to mention that almost every Yuan Ko's level was higher than Gahan's treasured sword wielders. At this time, they already felt that Gahan's strength had exceeded the common sense of normal people. And now, Gahan was no longer a normal person. He couldn't be explained as a normal treasured sword wielder. Even if the pleated sword spirit was here, Gui didn't think that he could do what Gahan did. In less than 5 minutes, a treasure sword tier sword wielder had slaughtered 200 yuan shun from rat tier to dragon tier. If Gui hadn't witnessed it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have believed it even if he was beaten to death. When the last Yuan Ko was killed, Gahan suddenly gasped. His legs went limp, and he fell forward onto a sword maiden in front of him. This sword maiden was a man-made sword maiden. She didn't have her own consciousness. Without her master's command, even though Gahan's face was stuck between her breasts, she didn't say a word and let Gahan stick there. Brother Gahan, what's wrong? Did you overuse your sword essence? Are you okay? Gui hurriedly rushed up to support Gahan's shoulders and pushed him up. Gui saw an expression that he would remember for the rest of his life. At this time, Gahan's face was completely red. His eyes seemed to be burning with desire. That's right, it was desire. It was the desire of a man to find a place to burrow. Seeing Gahan's gaze, Gui subconsciously tightened his legs. He was afraid that Gahan's desire would suddenly burn him. You guys guard the gate. I'm going to rest for a bit. Feeling Gui's muscles, Gahan seemed to be a little more awake. After saying this to Gui, he ran back into the fortress, found a random house, and entered it. He didn't come out again. That was close. Gui silently rubbed his butt. If Gahan really made a request, he really didn't know whether he should reject it or not. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.